Chapter 395. Even Xie Ding couldn't help but frown. "Don't worry, little brother." Xie Jingxing retorted sarcastically, "Older brother, we'll wait for you all to enter officialdom and establish your career in the court and have unlimited glory. At that time, we will still have to rely on you to protect the Xie family. The Marquis will be very happy." Now Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao had just entered officialdom, and if one were to talk about walking to that step, based on their abilities, it would take a long time. Xie Jingxing was mocking them for not having good aptitude and could only rely on the Xie family's relationship to climb up. "You!" Xie Changchao was furious and was about to speak when he heard Xie Ding shouting, "Enough!" Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu immediately did not make a sound, but it was Xie Jingxing who revealed some impatience. "Have the Marquis finished speaking? If finished, then quickly leave. I want to sleep." "Jingxing," Xie Ding suddenly said tiredly, "after so many years, do you still hate me so much?" He hated her so much that he didn't hesitate to sacrifice his own life to leave the Marquis's mansion. Xie Ding was now in his 40s but could still be considered as a middle-aged man with a beautiful beard. Even though he was a military general, he was different from Shen Xian's coarse and forthright manner and had the elegance of a gentleman. When Xie Ding was young, he was already known as the Confucian general, and he could be considered handsome. Most of the Xie family had inherited Xie Ding's looks, and even Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao were considered handsome, but compared to Xie Jingxing, there was a huge difference. Princess Yuqing was gentle and elegant, and Xie Ding was also a gentleman like Jade when he was young, but he gave birth to a Xie Jingxing who had a flourishing appearance, and what was more flourishing was his character. He was frivolous, arrogant, and dissolute. There was simply no one in the world who could do anything to him. He didn't seem to care about anything and was so arrogant that he didn't put anyone in his eyes. With this kind of appearance and temperament, if he were to be placed in the history books, he would probably be considered a legendary romantic figure. But there was nothing anyone could do about it. For example, Xie Ding. Xie Ding's hair had already turned white. He said, "Jingxing, do you still hate me?" When he said this, Xie Ding's voice trembled. He usually hated Xie Jingxing, but at this moment he was like a father helplessly surrendering to his son. Hate? Hate what? Did he hate the fact that he had allowed Madame Fong to marry into the family back then, so that a woman with evil intentions could take advantage of him? Let Princess Yuqing die with hatred and let Xie Jingxing live in such a deformed house. He was clearly in the wrong first, but he was infatuated with her and refused to marry again. There was such an infatuated person who refused to execute Madame Fong. Doting on Xie Jingxing in every possible way, trying to use this to atone for her sins. The mistake had been made, but the person was not around. How could the sin be redeemed? Xie Jingxing glanced at him and his gaze sharpened for a moment. However, even if this once all-powerful general showed such fatigue, he was not moved. He had never hated Xie Ding. He just disdained him. Furthermore, Xie Jingxing said, "Marquis is thinking too much. How would I have that leisure time? I don't have the time to hate you." These words were too hurtful. When Xie Ding heard this, he unconsciously took 2 steps back, clutching his chest. His face was sorrowful and difficult to understand. It was Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao who were more and more delighted in their hearts. The deeper Xie Jingxing was injured, the more disappointed Xie Ding would be with Xie Jingxing. Only in this way, there would be a day when the 2 brothers could completely replace Xie Jingxing's position. Like this. Xie Ding said with difficulty, "Then you go to battle." His voice became lower, "I will explain to the Xie family's army that those people will assist you. You can take the armor in the residence and the heart-protecting mirror." Xie Ding seemed to have aged 10 years in one night as he looked at Xie Jingxing. "You promise more." Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu supported Xie Ding out. Before leaving, Xie Changchao smiled maliciously at Xie Jingxing. "This younger brother will congratulate eldest brother for defeating the enemy and returning triumphantly." But he looked as if he could not wait for Xie Jingxing to die on the battlefield. After Xie Changwu and Xie Jingxing left, the doors of the room were closed, and under the flickering lights, one did not know when a black-clad person appeared. The black-clad person said, "Master, Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao, forget it." Xie Jingxing said, "Now that they are dead, the Marquis of Linan will not let me leave. The Xie family's army only listen to the Marquis of Linan and will not listen to Master's orders." The black-clad person said, "What does Master plan to do?" "Just a mere Xie family's army. Who would care about them?" Xie Jingxing was somewhat impatient. "How is the princess residence's arrangements?" Replying to Master, "The people placed are all in the dark to protect Her Highness Princess Rong Xian." "Is Master not going to bid farewell to Princess Rong Xian?" "No need." Xie Jingxing waved his hands, "This will do." The black-clad person respectfully acknowledged before turning and retreating. In the dim lights, that handsome face with red lips and white teeth had lost its previous unruly and romantic look and showed some gentleness. Taking off the purple gold robe and only wearing a jade white inner robe, the youth's eyelashes were long and seemed to be looking at the fire, as handsome as a person in a painting. "Hate." He lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. "Everyone in the world will hate me." Chapter 396. There was never a lack of new things in the Ding capital. As long as there was any movement the day before, the news would spread like wildfire the next day. If he were to implicate some famous person, he would naturally be talked about for 3 days and 3 nights. Some of them were discussing these things as a joke, but there were also some who truly felt that it was not worth it for the people they were discussing. In today's liveliness, the person they were talking about was the unparalleled formidable great general of Mingqi. Quelling the Woku pirates, fighting the Xiongnu, fighting in the northwest all year round, not claiming credit, not being arrogant, with outstanding military achievements, protecting the country. He was talking about the Shen family of generals. Ever since old General Shen, the Shen family had relied on their illustrious meritorious service to win prestige among the common people of Mingqi. It was a pity that out of the 3 sons of old General Shen, only the eldest Shen Xian inherited his mantle and continued to walk the path of a military official. Fortunately, a tiger father would not beget a dog son. Shen Xian did not disappoint the name of the formidable great general, and even Shen Xian's son, Shen Qiu, was a brave young general on the battlefield. Brothers fighting a tiger, father and son soldiers going into battle. Shen Xian did not put on airs in the army and charged at the forefront in battle. His union with Luo Shuiyan, the tiger daughter of a family of generals, was hailed as a legend of a generation. The common people of Mingqi respected Shen Xian from the bottom of their hearts, and if there was anything bad, it would be that Shen Xian's daughter did not inherit any of her parents' excellence and was instead an idiot. But even if the daughter was an idiot, when Shen Xian was mentioned, the commoners would always support and chase after him. But now, with the accusation of deceiving the emperor, the people were all dumbfounded. It wasn't a small matter, nor was it a matter of one's house. The first thing he did was to deceive the emperor and defy his superiors. That was a serious crime that could result in the confiscation of one's house. Early in the morning, the officials of the court surrounded the entrance of the Shen residence, saying that they wanted to collect evidence. The commoners only knew that Shen Xian had committed the crime of deceiving the emperor, but they did not know what the crime was and how he had deceived the emperor. How would General Shen deceive the emperor? He's such a good person. Yes, the last time my child was naughty and startled Shen Furen's horse. Not only did Shen Furen not blame us, she even apologized to us. Could it be that your majesty is mistaken about such a good person? Hey, what mistake? I heard that this time, it's already a done deal. There's even evidence. Someone whispered, even though one do not know what it is, one heard that His Highness Prince Ding personally reported it to General Shen. Your Highness Prince Ding. That's right. Think about it. His Highness Prince Ding would definitely not fake it. Perhaps it was because 5th Shin young lady was in love with His Highness Prince Ding and was humiliated. In order to vent his daughter's anger, General Shin did something that let His Majesty down. Ah, it is possible to say so. Poor General Shin's family, they were really harmed by that daughter. The voices of these commoners were not low, and Shin Miao stood at the residence's entrance and could clearly hear it. The people in the mansion all stood at the entrance of the mansion so that the soldiers could enter and search. Shin Yu pretended to be afraid as she hid behind Chen Roqiu and looked at Shin Miao sympathetically. 5th younger sister, how can these people say that about you? What does uncle's actions have to do with you? Shin Miao looked coldly at those fiendish-looking soldiers and smiled when she heard that. Once he was blinded, he would be branded as an idiot who adored Prince Ding for the rest of his life. It was really disgusting. Seeing that Shin Miao did not speak, Shin Yu thought that she had nothing to say and there was a proud look in her eyes, but she stood there without saying a word. After old Shin Furen was sure that Shin Xian would not implicate her, she was relieved and put on an upright attitude of a matriarch and angrily rebuked, "How can eldest lady do such a treacherous thing? My Shin family has been loyal for generations and there is no such shameless person." Simply throwing the Shin family's face. If the general was still here, he would not see eldest lady spoil the family's reputation. Chapter 397. When Shin Miao heard it, her heart moved and she looked at old Shin Furen. What is grandmother saying? Father is also a member of the Shin family and the Shin family and father are connected as one. How can one not care about father at this time? Previously when father was praised by the emperor, did grandmother not say that it was the Shin family's fortune to have such a male? Words that are said are like water that is spilled. Did grandmother forget this time? When the commoners who were watching the bustle outside heard it, their gazes shot towards old Shin Furen. The formidable great general had outstanding military merits and when he was bestowed by the emperor, old Shin Furen did not say that. They were one family and should share prosperity and misfortune together. Why was it that old Shin Furen's appearance was that one could only share riches and not trials and tribulations? Once one saw that others were in trouble, one could not wait to draw a clear line. What was wrong with that? Old Shin Furen was also aware that everyone was looking at her with unkind eyes and flew into a rage out of shame but did not know how to continue and could only look towards Chen Roqiu at the side. Shin Gui and Shin Wan had gone to court and the only one who could take charge was Chen Roqiu. Chen Roqiu smiled. 5th older sister, how would old Furen have the meaning that you said? Old Furen was just angered. You also know that our Shin family has always been upright people and that deceiving the monarch. If the old general knew of it, he would also blame your father. For your father to do such a thing, would the Shin family be like this in the future? When old Shin Furen saw Chen Roqiu's support, her foundation became firmer and she saw Chen Roqiu more pleasing to the eye. She nodded her head, correct. Your father committed a mistake and one is not allowed to say it. Shin Dongling and Wan Yinyang stood at the side and since they did not have the authority to speak, they only quietly watched and did not speak. Shin Miao said, so to speak, could it be that grandmother wants to draw a clear line with my father and expel him from the Shin family before letting it go? When she said that, Chen Roqiu knew that it was bad in her heart. Before she could stop it, she saw old Shin Furen's eyes lighting up and she said with righteous indignation, such an unfilial descendant, naturally one must be expelled from the Shin family. If grandmother is really so heartless, my father is still in prison and grandmother does not help to deal with it. Shin Miao's eyes hung down. Seeing Shin Miao bowing her head to show weakness, old Shin Furen felt a burst of comfort in her heart. A few days ago, everything was not going well for her because of the first branch. The grievance in her heart was swept away at this moment. The more carefree she was, the more righteous her tone became. The Shin family has been loyal for generations and even if one were to bear the infamy of being heartless, this old one would still make this decision for master. This kind of person cannot enter my Shin family's ancestral hall. From today onwards, Shin Xian and his family will be expelled from the Shin family. Old Shin Furen was speaking carefreely but did not see Chenro Chio's face change in color. Even though it was natural to draw a clear line of relations, but for old Shin Furen to do it so clearly, it was really too stupid. In the eyes of the commoners were not fools and would not stand on the side of the Shin residents. Thinking of this, Chenro Chio smiled apologetically to Shin Miao, fifth older sister. Old Furen does not mean this. It was only because he was angered by his eldest brother that he said that. Fifth lady, after a few days, when old madam's anger subsides, she won't be like this anymore. Shin Yu somewhat did not understand why her mother would say that. Was it not good to let old Shin Furen drive Shin Miao out? Now that Shin Xian and the rest were carrying the crime of deceiving the monarch, even if they were to rely on their years of meritorious deeds to avoid death, it would be hard to escape punishment and they would definitely be in dire straits. To drive out this dire family, perhaps they would not even have a place to stay. Just thinking about it made one happy. Third Shin need not say any more. Shin Miao said loudly, since old Furen values the Shin family's reputation so much that she does not even place familial affection in her eyes, then what is there for me to fear? It is better to separate from here and be at peace with each other, so as to not spoil the Shin family's reputation. She said it sarcastically, it is just that it would be difficult to move in such a short period of time. When the Lord Army is done searching, I will pack my luggage and move out once father and mother return. I will not tarnish the Shin family by a single bit. Chapter 398. She spoke angrily. At first glance, she seemed like a proud young lady who had been forced to speak indiscriminately. However, if one listened carefully, there was no room for negotiation at all. Shin Xian and wife were people who loved their daughter dearly. If they knew that in the time that they entered the palace, their daughter was forced to the point where she was almost swept out of the Shin family, one feared that there would be a score to be settled. The surrounding commoners were in an uproar. They never expected to see such a good show here. It was just that old Shin Furen's attitude was really displeasing, and on the contrary it was the fifth young lady of the Shin family who was called an idiot. She was delicate and pretty but was forced to such a situation, one could not help but feel sympathy and leaned towards Shin Miao's side. Chenro Chio was secretly shocked and looked at Shin Miao without speaking as it was too late to say anything now. To quarrel in front of so many commoners, within half a day, the entire Ding capital would know about this matter. Even though it was said that the Shin family and Shin Xian had drawn a clear line of relationship and it was the Shin family who benefited, but Chenro Chio had a faint uneasy feeling in her heart. Shin Miao had been leading everyone by the nose. No matter if it was to let old Shin Furen say that Shin Xian was expelled from the Shin family, or now everyone's sympathy was biased towards Shin Miao's side. But why did Shin Miao want to do that? Why did it look like Shin Miao borrowed old Shin Furen's words to urge Shin Xian to get rid of the Shin family? Chenro Chio could not help but think of the first household separation from the family a few days ago. Naturally old Shin Furen was not willing to let the first household leave with the treasures, but Shin Xian and wife's decision could not be changed. At that time they agreed to look at other residences, but who knew that such a thing would happen? He thought that the separation of the family would be left unsettled. He didn't expect that it would be brought up again. Moreover, under the watchful eyes of so many people, it would be impossible for him to go back on his words in the future. Old Shin Furen was dissatisfied with Chenro Chio helping to intercede for Shin Miao, but after seeing that Shin Miao did not know what was good for her, she said that there was not a trace of relationship with the Shin family before she was satisfied. With a cold snort, he ignored the disdainful gazes of the commoners outside and went in with his servant girl. Chenro Chio hesitated for a moment before holding Shin Yu's hand and followed in. Wan Yinyang also wanted to follow in but saw Shin Dongling release her hand and walk straight to her side. Fifth sister. Shin Dongling called out to her. This seemed to be the first time Shin Dongling called her after leaving the courtyard. Shin Miao's eyes hung down and lightly answered, third older sister. Fifth sister, don't worry. Shin Dongling looked soft and weak, but her smile was warm. First uncle will definitely be fine. Eldest uncle is not a person who will deceive the monarch. The truth will eventually come to light. Shen Miao's expression did not change and said, "Many thanks to third older sister." Shen Dongling then smiled and turned to the stunned Wan Yinyang's side and pulled her towards the door. Young lady, Jingzhe came over and asked, "What is third young lady's meaning?" Just now with Shen Miao's arrogance and willful ruckus, it almost indicated that her relationship with the rest of the people in the Shen residence was broken. This Shen Dongling came to express goodwill. Was she not afraid that old Shen Furen would blame her? Shen Miao did not speak and looked at the back view of Shen Dongling and Wan Yinyang leaving and shook her head thoughtfully. Inside the door, seeing that there was no one around, Wan Yinyang whispered, "Linger, what happened to you just now? How dare you express goodwill to fifth young lady? If old Furen saw it, return and tell your father." Shen Gui was also not pleasing to the eyes of the first household, so it would be strange if Shen Gui would be happy when Shen Dongling rushed to please the first household. "Do not worry, Yinyang." Shen Dongling smiled, "They will not be able to fight against fifth younger sister." "What?" Wan Yinyang was startled. Shen Dongling pursed her lips and pulled Wan Yinyang forward, "Do not ask any more. Let's go back." Such a big matter happened to the Shen family that even the commoners were alarmed, so naturally the previous court's anger was quite heavy. Chapter 399. In the throne room, Emperor Wenhui sat on the dragon throne and his face was so gloomy that water could drip out. Looking at the crowd of officials in the hall, he threw the booklet in his hands at the nearest official's face. That official's face was hit by the booklet but he did not dare to say a word and immediately knelt down. Shen Xian and wife had not left the palace since Shen Qiu entered, thus the outside did not know what happened but the officials were well aware that Shen Xian and wife were obviously detained by Emperor Wenhui. Why would one detain an official? This was something that one did not even need to think about. This official had a problem and the emperor wanted to deal with him. This kind of simple logic was something that all the officials understood. Generally speaking, it was better to keep silent. But today Emperor Wenhui's expression was somewhat strange. "Count of Ping Nan, you speak." Emperor Wenhui called out. The Count of Ping Nan, Su Yu's body quivered and the other officials started to look at him. Su Yu thought of the words that Su Mingfeng said to him last night and no longer hesitated. He took out a booklet from his sleeves and respectfully handed it to the eunuch beside the emperor, who then handed it to Emperor Wenhui. Replying to your majesty, this official also think that the formidable great general's action is presumptuous and did not put the imperial family in his eyes. Pleading your majesty to punish Shen Xian and execute his 9 generations. Execute his 9 generations? It was still alright for those officials who had good relations with Su Yu, but when those officials who did not have any political relations with Su Yu heard it, their eyes were filled with surprise. All along, the Count of Ping Nan had always been gentle in the court and could be considered as a good person. Who knew that the moment he opened his mouth, he would want Shen Xian's life? These words were too heavy. Emperor Wenhui's hand trembled as he took the booklet and his eyes stared at Su Yu. Su Yu raised his head and had an impassioned look. Reporting to your majesty. The Marquis of Linan, Xie Ding, who had been silent all along, also said, Shen Xian has his own troops and even dared to defy your majesty's orders. One fear that he already had the intention to rebel. This official also agrees with Su Daren's words to execute the 9 generations of the Shen family. Everyone's eyes looked towards Xie Ding and Su Yu. Everyone knew that the Su and Xie families had a close relationship and the Shen family and these 2 families had a clear distinction. Now that something had happened to Shen Xian, the Su and Xie families were like grasshoppers on a rope. They would definitely jump up and step on them a few times before they would be satisfied. Emperor Wenhui's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. Originally, he was extremely satisfied with the evidence that Fu Xiu-yi sent over. He had been eyeing the Shen family, this fat piece of meat, covetously, but he had not been able to find an opportunity. With Fu Xiuyi's evidence, no matter what, it was a very simple matter to take back the Shin family's military power. Who knew that early in the morning, when this matter was mentioned in court, the ministers all expressed that Shin Xian would be severely punished. Shin Xian had been fighting in the northwestern region all year round and did not have a deep relationship with these officials in court. Emperor Wenhui had long expected that there were many people who thought that Shin Xian was wrong, but he did not expect that it would be to this extent. But there were very few who pleaded for Shin Xian. The emperor's heart was full of suspicions, and if there were many officials that interceded for Shin Xian, Emperor Wenhui would most likely suspect that Shin Xian was privately close to the officials. But if there were more people who impeached Shin Xian, Emperor Wenhui would be more at ease with Shin Xian. An official who had a rebellious heart would not set up so many enemies for himself. If one were to say that these officials impeaching Shin Xian made Emperor Wenhui hesitate, then the Count of Ping Nan and the Marquis of Lin An's 9-clan execution made Emperor Wenhui suspicious. The Shin family, Su family and Xia family were all thorns in Emperor Wenhui's heart. Not to say how these officials were, but just based on the prestige and military power that these large clans had, it would make Emperor Wenhui sleep uneasy. How could the side couch allow others to sleep soundly? Emperor Wenhui did not allow the existence of a family that was above the imperial power. Chapter 400. And the Su and Xia family were ropes that were twisted together. It was fortunate that the Shin family and these two families were like fire and water, otherwise they would really become a big trouble for Emperor Wenhui. If it was really as what the Su and Xia families said, and the Shin family's 9 clans were exterminated, then within the Ming Qi's lands, there would no longer be any power that could contend against the Su and Xia families. If he allowed the Su and Xia families to grow stronger, his throne would become even more unstable. For the first time, Emperor Wenhui felt that it was difficult to dismount the tiger. He only wanted to take back a part of Shin Xian's military power as the Shin family could still keep Su Xia in check, but now there was no one who was willing to speak up for Shin Xian. Emperor Wenhui only felt that his head was hurting. He asked slowly, 9 familial extermination. Normally, the officials would be able to see that the emperor's expression was not right. However, Xia Ding did not know what was wrong with him today. He stiffened his neck and said, yes. Emperor Wenhui closed his eyes, and when he looked at Xia Ding again, it was as if he was looking at Xia Ding's wolf's ambition through his skin. Su Yu was a little worried, but he didn't show it on his face. He still looked like Xia Ding's words made sense. Finally, a junior general stepped out and said, even though General Shen had acted willfully and recklessly this time, but the crime does not warrant death. Previously you had also made great contributions to the court and can atone for your crimes. His Majesty is benevolent and hope that the Shin family's army has been fighting on the battlefield for many years, protecting the country and giving a lenient sentence. This young general had a good relationship with Shin Xian. He probably saw that the situation here was disadvantageous to Shin Xian, so he couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up for Shin Xian. Emperor Wenhui had been waiting for the person to say these words, but one did not know if it was because Shin Xian's popularity was too bad that no one spoke. When this young general opened his mouth, Emperor Wenhui's eyebrows stretched out and said, "Beloved official is right. Even though General Shen is guilty this time, he had made meritorious services in the past. If one were to say that the 9 generations of one's family were to be executed, it would seem that Jin do not remember old feelings. Your Majesty, you mustn't." Su Yu quickly knelt on the ground. General Shen can even do things like deceiving the emperor, one does not know what will happen in the future. Xia Ding also hurriedly said, "Yes, yes. Your Majesty, please reconsider." The more both of them said so, the more suspicious Emperor Wenhui felt. He did not even look at the both of them and spoke to that young general, or rather to the entire court's civil and military officials. When old General Shen was alive, he also accompanied the late emperor through life and death. The Shin family had been loyal for generations. The formidable great general Shin Xian used to be incomparably brave, and returned after defeating Shi Rong at the end of the year. It could be considered as atoning for his crimes. Zhen is not a tyrant. I will implicate the 9 generations. Shin Xian's family are innocent. Your Majesty is wise. The young general hurriedly knelt down again. Emperor Wenhui waved his hands and said, "It is just that Shin Xian is like this, so Zhen still want to punish him. Pass down the orders to take back the Shin family's military tally and punish Shin Xian's salary for 1 year. The Shin family's army will only be allocated to the front for him to transfer, and the rest will be merged into the imperial army." Everyone gasped, and their gazes were a little strange. One could say that Emperor Wenhui was cruel, but he did not harm the lives of the Shin family. It could be said that Emperor Wenhui was gentle and wanted to snatch the tiger tally from the start. The tiger tally commanded the 3 armies, and to a military general, if the tiger tally was taken away, it meant that the soldier had lost his life on the battlefield. And the front of the Shin family's army were just some insignificant cookery soldiers, but the proper Shin family's army was merged into the imperial army. That was to say, the troops that Shin Xian had trained for so many years, were all used as wedding clothes for the imperial family. The ministers were all distressed. No wonder Emperor Wenhui was so generous in his words. Emotions were already grasping the other's lifeline. Even if Shin Xian escaped this calamity, this formidable great general would only be left with an empty shell, so what kind of deterrence was there? To keep the reputation of the Shin family, it was only to check and balance the other aristocratic families. Chapter 401. After Emperor Wenhui finished speaking, he waved his hands in annoyance and said, "End of court." He turned around and flicked his sleeves. Following his words, it would not be long before Shin Xian and wife who were under house arrest and Shin Qiu would be released from the palace. It was just that at that time, one did not know if Shin Xian and wife would be able to rejoice when they were stripped of their military power. Emperor Wenhui flicked his sleeves and left the officials looking at each other in dismay. No one had expected that such a grand and spectacular matter would be handled so simply. It could be said that it was simple. Quietly one would become a lone commander. Would Shin Xian be so angry that he would curse one's mother? Suyu patted the soil on his knees and stood up. Coincidentally he saw that Xie Ding had also tidied up his clothes. He walked over to Xie Ding and whispered, "What happened to you just now? Why did you suddenly speak?" Even though Suyu had obtained Su Mingfeng's words and promised to report against Shin Xian, he did not want to get his good friend involved in this muddy water. The situation that the Xie family was facing was more complicated than his, and if one was not good, he would implicate the Xie family. Suyu really wanted to blame himself to death. So Suyu informed the matter to his colleagues that he was on good terms with but did not tell Xie Ding. He did not expect that today Xie Ding would actually follow along with his words and was almost angered by Emperor Wenhui. Xie Ding shook his head. "From what you said, I know that you have other ideas. Since you want to help Shin Xian, then I will conveniently help, but it is only to help you." Xie Ding was an old fox that had been in the court for many years. Compared to Shin Xian who only knew how to fight, Xie Ding was better at the interests of the court. He could see that Suyu was doing the opposite to help Shin Xian, so he took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. Hearing this, Suyu was somewhat helpless. He felt that his good friend's casual character was the same as Xie Ding's son, Xie Jingxing. Thinking of Xie Jingxing, Suyu was suddenly surprised. "Oh yes, I heard from Ming Feng that Jingxing requested for the commander's position. Is it true? Ming Feng also know about it?" Xie Ding shook his head and sighed. "Yes, it is true." "Could it be that Jingxing is crazy?" Suyu said incredulously, "The northern Jiang is not a place to play around." "Old Xie, are you really not worried? What's the use of me not being at ease? What's the use of not being at ease?" Xie Ding was helpless. When have I ever been able to interfere with something he has decided on? Now, I only hope that he is safe. This is all my fault, and only I can pay for it now. Actually, this isn't your fault. Hearing this, Suyu felt a little sad. One wrong step after another. All these years, Xie Ding had been tormented because of what happened in the past. His conscience was uneasy, and his son was not close to him. As an outsider, he felt sad, and Xie Ding felt even worse. He diverted the topic, heard that the report on Shen Xian's crimes was submitted by the 9th prince, Prince Ding. Why do I not see him today? It seems that His Majesty sent him to the Ministry of Works to inspect. Xie Ding frowned and said, when he learns of this, I wonder what he will think. What else can I think? Suyu sneered, I've already taken everything I want. It doesn't matter if I keep those heads or not. This was the first time Xie Ding had seen Suyu like this. He was somewhat surprised and asked, that's right, you still haven't said why did you suddenly help Shen Xian? When did you have a friendship with the Shen family? Suyu looked at the people who had walked far away, and when there was no one around, he then whispered to Xie Ding, Ai, how is it me? It is my son Ming Feng. He told me at night that the current Shen family is just an opening for His Majesty, and after the Shen family, it would be inevitable that it would be my Su family. The matter in court quickly spread throughout the residence. Emperor Wenhui left Shen Xian's entire family alive and only gave orders on their positions, which made the commoners sigh that the imperial family was still very benevolent. Not only that, seeing how Emperor Wenhui was so lenient to Shen Xian, everyone guessed that Shen Xian's prestige had not decreased and his weight in the imperial family's heart was quite heavy, so it seemed that it was not as bad as the rumors. The layman would watch the bustle while the expert would see the artistry. The commoners did not understand but the officials could see it clearly. Without the military power, the Shen family was like a tiger without its teeth. It had an empty appearance and no longer had the prestige of the past. In the Shen residence, Shen Gui and Shen Wan were talking about the matter. Even though it was not as severe as they had imagined, they were very satisfied with the military power being taken back. This meant that Shen Xian's reputation and prestige was much lower than theirs. In the western courtyard, when Jingzhi told Shen Miao the news, Shen Miao had just finished her lunch. Young lady. Jingzhi looked at Shen Miao's leisurely appearance and her heart calmed down before asking, young lady is not worried at all. Is it that? Actually without military power, it is not as bad as what the outside say. Shen Miao wiped her mouth with a handkerchief. No need to be afraid. If it is yours, one would not be able to run away, and if it is not yours, one would not be able to snatch it. Chapter 402. On the day that Shen Xian left the palace and returned to the residence, Shen Miao personally went to the city walls outside the palace to receive him. The rest of the Shen family were naturally dissatisfied with this ending, especially old Shen Furen. She thought that Shen Xian would be unlucky this time and did not think that Shen Xian's life would be spared. But hearing that Shen Gui told her what it meant for the military power to be confiscated, old Shen Furen became happy again. Shen Xian, who had his military power confiscated, at least in terms of influence in his career, he could no longer be compared to Shen Gui and Shen Wan. Old Shen Furen was short-sighted and did not think that the Shen family was now one. When one looked at the Shen family from the outside, naturally they would look at Shen Xian's reputation. With the loss of Shen Xian's reputation, how would the Shen family be as awe-inspiring as it was in the past? But old Shen Furen most likely did not care. In her heart, the Shen Gui and Shen Wan that she gave birth to were many times stronger than Shen Xian. If it was not for the old general's favoritism, how would Shen Xian have today's results? Since Shen Gui was in dire straits, it was not bad to take this opportunity to expel Shen Xian's branch from the Shen family. It was just that how this family would be divided was also a clever method. In the Shen residence, old Shen Furen had the idea of separating from the family, but Shen Miao did not put it in her heart at all. Since things had reached such a stage, it was better to go according to what she had thought before. It was one thing for the emperor to take back the military power, but the Shen family without the military power was indeed nothing to fear. If they continued to stay here, the Shin family would have a lot of enemies and eventually Shin Xian's branch would be forced into a desperate situation. Still need to retreat. Without any reason, Shin Miao remembered Xia Jingxing's warning to her that day. This retreat word was indeed the only way out for the Shin family. He could see the key point with one glance. The carriage stopped at the corner of the palace walls so that it would not be seen by others. Adding insult to injury, those colleagues of Shin Xian who did not agree with him on politics and those who were watching the bustle would not necessarily be guarding the palace doors. Shin Miao was clearer than anyone else what kind of conduct the Fu family had. They wanted to put on a broad-minded attitude but secretly planned to let the other party suffer losses. Shin Xian had an illustrious reputation and now that his tiger tally had been taken away from him, many people would be happy to see this desolate appearance. Shin Miao had suffered a lot of losses in her previous life and in Mingqi, she did not have any face left. She could endure the humiliation herself but could not endure her family being treated like this. They could only stop the carriage here and wait for Shin Xian to come out and take them away. Just as he was thinking, he heard Mo Qing's low shout from outside, "Stop!" A gust of wind blew in and Shin Miao's eyes blurred as the curtain of the carriage was lifted and there was one more person in the spacious carriage. Guyu cried out in fright and Jingzhe covered her mouth. Mo Qing's somewhat flustered voice sounded, "Young lady." Shin Miao looked at the person opposite her. On top of the carriage, the young man was dressed in a dark red official robe. His peach blossom eyes were flirtatious, and his thin lips were slightly curled up. His originally serious and upright official robe looked beautiful and delicate in it, making people unable to take their eyes off him. Mo Qing, withdraw. Shin Miao reprimanded in a low voice. But Mo Qing's voice tightened through the curtain of the carriage. That person's action was too fast and he could not stop it at all. It was absolutely impossible to let a stranger and Shin Miao in the same carriage. You cannot beat him. Shin Miao calmly said to the outside before looking at Jingzhe and Guyu, both of you should also go out. Guard the side of the carriage. Jingzhe and Guyu had seen Xia Jingxing before and knew that Xia Jingxing and Shin Miao had some friendship but it was unclear to what extent the friendship had reached. To say it was intimate, both of them would occasionally oppose each other, but to say it was enemies, how would Shin Miao be so lenient to the enemy? But with a few experiences, Jingzhe and Guyu also expected that Xia Jingxing would not harm Shin Miao. Shin Miao was so arrogant to let Xia Jingxing stay in the carriage, so it should be to confirm this point. Jingzhe and Guyu did not say anything and got off the carriage. Chapter 403. In an instant, there were only Xia Jingxing and Shin Miao left in the carriage. Heard that the Marquis of Lineage spoke out to help in court yesterday. Many thanks to little Marquis. Shin Miao said. Xia Ding helped Suyu to impeach Shin Xian. On the surface it was an impeachment but in fact it was giving Shin Xian a way out. It was alright if others could not see it but Shin Miao believed that with Xia Jingxing's skills as an old fox, it was impossible for him not to see it. Sure enough, when her half-true and half-false words came out, Xia Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile and lazily leaned back as he loosened his arms. It is the Marquis of Lineage's own idea and has nothing to do with me. Oh. Shin Miao looked at him and smiled, then little Marquis came uninvited to my carriage. Is it not to hear my thanks? She purposely emphasized the words my carriage. It was obvious that she was very angry with Xia Jingxing for doing this kind of uninvited things. Xia Jingxing stared at her. You intend to let Shin Xian retreat to the northwest region? Luo family? Shin Miao's heart jumped and she looked at Xia Jingxing without speaking. She was thinking like this. Xia Jingxing had given her a retreat route but she did not want to passively retreat like this. She had not even played this game of chess in Mingqi, so how could she lose the initiative now? Her ambition and her revenge had not even started and if she was to be suppressed, naturally it would not do. It was not a big deal to have the military power confiscated. What Shen Xian's side valued the most was not the tiger tally that the Fu family thought, but their ability to lead troops into battle. To be able to bring out one Shen family's army, it did not mean that one could not bring out another Shen family's army. And in the currently confiscated military power, Shen Yuan's people had already mixed into the Shen family's army, and that was also Fu Xiuyi's people. It was too tiring to lead such an army and guard against people shooting arrows from the back at any time. Unless one led another clean army. Starting over, the Shen family's military power was gone, but Luo Shuiyan's maiden family, the Luo family, still had it. It was just that the Luo family's military power was not as good as the Shen family's, and the matter of defending the border was not good enough, thus it did not attract the attention of others. Shen Miao had the idea of the Luo family. She wanted to turn the Luo family into another Shen family's army, a trump card that no one knew about. Wasn't the Fu family worried all day that Shen Xian would raise his army and rebel? She would show it to the Fu family. It was just that, this kind of secretive thought was actually exposed by Xie Jingxing's sharp eyes. When her thoughts were exposed, the moment of panic made Shen Miao's face flash a trace of embarrassment. If Xie Jingxing knew of her thoughts. This person, the tragic hero who had left a thick and colorful stroke in the history of Ming Qi, what would he do? Threaten her? Tell on her? Or, kill her? However, he probably wouldn't have such a chance. What kind of person was Shen Miao? She had experienced the most difficult times in her previous lifetime, and even if she was momentarily shocked, she would quickly suppress the emotions in her heart. She thought that Xie Jingxing was about to leave for the northern borderline, and if this trip to the northern borderline was to follow the route of the previous lifetime, Xie Jingxing would die. He would end up with 1,000 arrows piercing his heart. The deadline of 10 days was almost up. Fate was a hand that could flip the clouds and rain. Xie Jingxing's hands and eyes were omnipotent. So what if his mind was treacherous? In the end, he would not be able to escape that ending. Shen Miao looked up at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing was really good looking. In the previous lifetime when Shen Miao stayed in the 6 palaces, she had seen a lot of talented and handsome youths. Even Fu Xiuyi, whom she had been pining for, did not have this kind of grace. Long eyebrows that slanted to the temples, a high nose bridge, thin lips that were slightly raised but very rosy. His smile always had a bit of evilness. His handsomeness was somewhat overbearing, with a clear outline that was hard and cold, but he had a pair of dark and bright peach blossom eyes. When he looked at people, he was affectionate but ruthless, giving an illusion of gentleness. Chapter 404. It was just that under this person's cynical and unruly appearance, only one knew what kind of black heart he had. Xie Jingxing was still a youth and had a youthful handsomeness and heroic spirit, but today he was wearing a dark red court robe which made him look more mature. Fu Ming once read a section of Ming Qi's Xie family's history and lamented, a young talent, an eternal character, to die young, the sorrow of Ming Qi. One could see the high evaluation of Xie Jingxing. When Shen Miao really noticed Xie Jingxing, it was already later and she only saw him from afar at the palace banquet. She vaguely felt that he was a very good-looking young man, but Fu Xiuyi's attitude towards him was not warm. Today's Xie Jingxing was still a miserable youth. Who would have thought that it would not be long before this handsome smiling youth would lose his life on the battlefield? There was an additional trace of pity in Shen Miao's eyes. Being reborn, she was not a good-hearted person, but Fu Ming and Wan Yu had praised him before, so there was an additional trace of appreciation. Her uncertain and sometimes vigilant and sometimes sympathetic gaze made Xie Jingxing somewhat inexplicable. Suddenly he thought of the first time he saw Shen Miao at the entrance of Guangwen Tang. Shen Miao also used such a pitiful expression to look at him. Xie Jingxing asked thoughtfully, "You pity me?" This person was simply better at observing one's words and body language than her. Shen Miao secretly thought in her heart, but a smile floated on her face. What qualifications do I have to pity others? Xie Jingxing made a "n" sound as if he felt that what she said was reasonable. But he suddenly reached out to lift the curtain of the carriage. This was a remote place and no one would come over. Lifting a corner of the curtain of the carriage, one could see the high palace walls. Shen Miao's gaze could not help but be somewhat distant. She had lived in the palace for so many years and was reborn, but she was still unable to escape this fate. But she did not regret it. What was the purpose of living? The dead could no longer be revived. Living was naturally to take revenge. Shen Miao looked carefully, as if she wanted to engrave every piece of the palace walls in her eyes. When Xie Jingxing saw it, his lips curled up. You want to live in? Shen Miao was slightly startled. If you want to live in, I can help you. Xie Jingxing said. His tone was inexplicable, but his smile seemed to hide something deeper. When the time comes, how will you thank me? If little Marquis is able to burn down this palace, perhaps I will be endlessly grateful to you. Shen Miao answered. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows in surprise. I thought you wanted to be a noble person. I want to be a noble person. Shen Miao turned her head and looked at him with a sarcastic smile, but not the kind of noble person that you are talking about. They are nobles who are even nobler than nobles. You want to be the Empress? Empress? Shen Miao's eyes were slightly absent-minded. She also wore court attire and had a full head of phoenix hairpins. During the coronation ceremony of the Emperor and Empress, the scene was boundless, the officials knelt down and the common people cheered. She was the mother of the world. At that time, she thought she had everything she wanted. But now, it seemed that the higher one climbed, the more painful the fall would be. Empress? It was just an empty reputation. It is easy to be an empress. Xie Jingxing plainly said, it is difficult to be an emperor. The winds and clouds of Ming Qi were gathering and the 9 princes each had their own merits. Even the crown prince's position was not very stable. Who knew which hand the imperial seal would fall into in the future? For a noble family to marry their daughter to a prince, was it not a gamble for one's future? Riches were sought in danger and greed was a human's instinct. A general success was built on the bones of 10,000 people, the winner was king and the loser was a bandit. Since a female had chosen the wrong person, naturally she had to follow. Xie Jingxing casually said, who did you choose? Chapter 405. He was asking her which prince she favored, which one did she want to marry, and which one did she want to support. Little Marquis, who do you think has a better future? Shen Miao asked back. Looking at one's physiognomy, no one has a future. Xie Jingxing's words were horrifying to hear. What about you? Then look for someone with a future. Then what do you think of me? Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and asked. Most likely his words were to tease Shen Miao as he was not serious about it. Little Marquis also does not have a future. Shen Miao looked at him seriously. Xie Jingxing was choked by Shen Miao's words. Even though he was not angry, he was somewhat displeased. He thought that all the females that he had met adored him and all the males that he had met were afraid of him, but Shen Miao did not adore him nor was she afraid of him. She even kept stroking the tiger's fur. Was he too kind to Shen Miao? So it made Shen Miao feel that he was a person with a good temper. What exactly does little Marquis want to say? If you are done then quickly leave. Shen Miao impolitely asked him to leave. It would not be good to be seen and misunderstood by others. Misunderstanding? Xie Jingxing's eyes flashed with a smile as he deliberately said softly, what misunderstanding? A lecher taking advantage of a young female from a good family. Shen Miao did not even blink as she answered neatly. She could see that Xie Jingxing was shameless in the matter of despising etiquette and rules. Even though Xie Jingxing had seen all kinds of orioles and swallows, he was somewhat dizzy from Shen Miao's valiant words. He coughed twice and sat up straight. He did not tease Shen Miao anymore and said, retreat to the northwestern region and the faster the better. The longer it drags on, it would not be good for Shen Xian. Shen Miao looked up at him as she did not expect that Xie Jingxing would remind her of such a sentence. After all, she did not want to go up against Xie Jingxing, and it was already very good that Xie Jingxing did not have any hostility towards her. Many thanks. Xie Jingxing said, it would be best if Shen Xian could leave the Ding capital before I set off. Shen Miao was somewhat helpless, that would also need to succeed. Not everyone had the same ability as Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao always felt that the background that Xie Jingxing relied on did not seem to be the residence of the Marquis of Linan, and was even above the residence of the Marquis of Linan. But in Mingqi, other than the imperial family, what else was there that was more powerful than the residence of the Marquis of Linan? And the imperial family and Xie Jingxing were now opposing each other. Shen Miao could not guess. Xie Jingxing paused for a moment and suddenly lifted the curtain of the carriage and flew out. He came and left quickly, and before Shen Miao could react, she heard someone calling from outside, Furen, master, eldest young master. Shen Miao lifted the curtain of the carriage and saw Shen Xian and wife and Shen Qiu walking over from the corner of the city gates. When she saw Jing Zhe and Gu Yu, she was surprised for a moment. Shen Miao looked around again and did not find any trace of Xie Jingxing. She thought that this person was very alert and his skills were good. To appear and disappear so mysteriously, he could be the ancestor of the gentleman on the beam. Luo Shuiyan saw Jing Zhe and walked over quickly, just in time to see Shen Miao jumping down the carriage. After not seeing for a few days, Shen Xian and wife and Shen Qiu had become a lot more haggard. Shen Miao had seen the imperial family's methods before. Sometimes when one had not decided on how to deal with a person, house arrest could wear down a person's willpower. Shen Xian's family were all martial people and had firm willpower, but to leave Shen Miao in the residence, it would inevitably make one think more. Luo Shuiyan took a few steps forward and pulled Shen Miao's hands to size her up. Jiao Jiao, was there anyone who made things difficult for you these few days? Shen Miao shook her head. Luo Shuiyan then gave a sigh of relief. Shen Qiu asked, why did younger sister not stay in the residence and ran over here? Heard that father and mother returned to the residence today and feared that there would not be a horse carriage, thus came over to receive. Shen Miao smiled. Chapter 406. Shen Xian moved his lips, wanting to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He knew that there were a lot of people watching the show and Shen Miao's action was to avoid the eyes and ears of others, and it was very considerate. It was just that he had promised to protect his wife and child, but now his tiger tally had been snatched away by someone else. How could he not feel depressed? He silently boarded the carriage, and Luo Shuiyan did not want Shen Miao to worry, so she also pulled Shen Miao into the carriage. Jing Zhe and the rest sat in the carriage at the back, and there was only Shen Miao's family in the front carriage. Mother, what did His Majesty say? Shen Miao asked. Luo Shuiyan hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, it's nothing. It's just a misunderstanding. Shen Miao said, the tiger tally was taken away, how can it be a misunderstanding? Shen Qiu was surprised for a moment and subconsciously looked at Shen Xian. Having the tiger tally taken away, the one who was the most angry should be Shen Xian. He also did not know where the mistake was. The only possibility was that there was a problem within the Shen family's army, otherwise who would know about the matter of disobeying orders and massacring the city? Actually, there is nothing wrong with the tiger tally being taken away. Luo Shuiyan tried to comfort Shen Miao as she was afraid that Shen Miao would feel uneasy. He said, even without the tiger seal, we can still fight. Your father is still a general. We will be the same as before. Shen Miao's eyes hung down as Shen Xian and Shen Qiu looked at her worriedly. In the past, Shen Miao was somewhat arrogant and willful, but that was because she had the backing of the formidable great general. Once there was no backing, it was normal for this noble young lady to not be able to accept it. Is it still going to war? Shen Miao softly said, bring the frontline people to war and bring the cooks to war. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were instantly stunned. These days they were used to Shin Miao's gentle and obedient manner, and when they suddenly heard such a sharp question, it was somewhat unbelievable. Shin Xian's face turned livid. The pride of a general was not to be trampled on by anyone. Emperor Wenhui spared his life but gave him a deep humiliation which made him feel worse than killing Shin Xian. Of course, we can still fight without the tiger tally, but your majesty can always send another deputy general, assistant general, military officer, and supervisor. When you give orders, you have to look at other people's faces. When you mobilize the 3 armies, you have to use other people's talismans. Isn't the title of general just an empty shell? Shin Miao raised her head and her pair of eyes were incomparably clear, as if she was speaking the most ordinary household words. But who had seen such an overbearing Shin Miao before? Perhaps Shin Qiu had seen it before, but Shin Xian and Luo Shuayan had never seen it before. Moreover, he was directly talking about the matters of the imperial court. Shin Xian clenched his fists but still comforted, "Jiao Jiao, father will clear his name and the Shin family army will eventually return to father's hands. Jiao Jiao, your identity will not change." Shin Xian's entire life was based on his military achievements and he believed that in Ming Qi, other than Xie Ding, no one could be as brave as him. A treasured sword was not afraid of being hidden too deeply. There would come a day when it would be unsheathed again. But how long do we have to wait? By that time, would the Shin family army who had already become the imperial army still be loyal to father? Even now, there are spies under father's command. In the future, who can guarantee that there won't be more? Hearing this, Luo Shuayan's expression turned solemn as she asked, "Jiao Jiao, who told you these words?" Shin Miao was able to know that Shin Xian's tiger tally was taken away and was also able to know that the Shin family's army was placed in the imperial army because these were things that everyone knew. But the matter of there being a traitor in the Shin family's army was something that was not heard from the outside. Those who were able to say such things to Shin Miao would at least have done some research on the matters of the imperial court. Luo Shuayan was afraid that Shin Miao was being used by others. Shin Miao shook her head, "I am not a fool. I might not really not know about the things that others do not tell me." Shin Qiu said, "Younger sister is very smart." On the matter of Prince Yu, Shin Qiu could see Shin Miao's ability. He knew that Shin Miao's vision was not like that of an unmarried young female. She was exceptionally ruthless but could see it clearly. Chapter 407. It was rare for Shin Qiu to say such things, so Shin Xian frowned and asked, "Jiao Jiao, what exactly do you want to say? Since the Shin family army is no longer ours, then there is no need for the Shin family army. How about giving up?" Shin Miao's words were shocking. "Jiao Jiao." Luo Shuayan stopped her words and suddenly felt that her tone was too harsh and quickly softened. "The Shin family army was brought up by your father and there are countless of subordinates. How is it easy to say to give up? It is because of the friendship of comrades on the battlefield. This. Impossible. Then what is father prepared to do?" Shin Miao asked back, "Continue to endure silently like this?" Enduring silently might be able to wait for a good opportunity, but if one were to be suppressed by others, at the end there would be nothing left. Shin Xian stared at Shin Miao, as if he had never known this daughter of his before. There was a thoughtful expression on his face as he asked, "What does Jiao Jiao think should be done?" "The east side is not bright but the west side is bright." Shin Miao's eyes were astonishingly bright. "Father can lead the Shin family army well, why not lead other armies well?" Shin Xian was surprised for a moment before he laughed and caressed Shin Miao's head, as if Shin Miao's words made him much happier. He said, "Indeed a young lady that has not grown up. In this world, how would there be so many soldiers for others to lead?" At the end, there was a faint sadness in his words. The Shin family army was like a child that Shin Xian had raised up, and now the pain of losing a child, how could words be used to describe it? Shin Miao smiled faintly, then, "What about the Luo family?" Shin Xian's smile abruptly stopped. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu thought of something at the same time and their eyes landed on Shen Miao. Shen Miao said unhurriedly, in Wei's hands, there is still a group of scattered soldiers. Even though it cannot be compared to the previous Shen family army, there are still a lot of them. If slowly trained, it may not be the next Shen family army. Luo Shuiyan's maiden family, the Luo family, was a family of generals, but it was a declining family of generals. It was true that there were soldiers under them, but after Shen Xian was stationed in the northwestern region, the Luo family's soldiers in the Shaochun city disarmed and returned to the fields. Even though they still had the name of soldiers, they took the rations and did not do anything. After so many years, they were no different from ordinary people. How can this be? The Shen family had been loyal to the monarch for so many years and serving the monarch was an instinct. Shen Miao's words could even be said to be disgraceful. Keeping his own soldiers in a place unknown to the emperor. Luo Shuiyan said, "Jiao Jiao, this is not a joke." She did not know how to explain to Shen Miao how taboo the imperial family had towards the generals who held the army. Shen Miao was just a young lady, so how could she understand? It was Shen Qiu who spoke very little that opened his mouth. Younger sister wants to use the Luo family's army to replace the Shen family's army? It cannot be considered as a replacement. Shen Miao gently smiled, it is just that father is a general after all and cannot have no one by his side. Naturally there must be followers. Since that is the case, what is the difference between the Shen family's army and the Luo family's army? With the Luo family's army, wouldn't it be good to have one more chip to protect oneself? She described her rebellious words as self-protection, which at least made it sound less frightening. Luo Shuiyan felt that Shen Miao's words today were somewhat inconceivable, and when she looked up, she saw Shen Xian's tightly knitted brows, as if he was seriously thinking about Shen Miao's words and felt a headache. Shen Xian looked at Shen Miao and deliberately guided Shen Miao's words. What Jiao Jiao said sounds very good, but the Luo family's army is far away in the Shaochun city. How do we go over? That would have to depend on father's decision. Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him. Perhaps father can try and explain to His Majesty to retreat to the northwestern region and be willing to go to the Shaochun city to defend and set off today. Shen Xian and the three of them were stunned again. The Shaochun city was a small city at the northwestern border and was thousands of mountains and rivers away from the Ding capital. If Shen Xian really made this request, anyone would think that it was because the tiger Tally was taken away and this formidable great general was disheartened that he would be stationed at the small border. As for the prestige of the formidable great general, it would be slowly drowned out by history. Shen Xian's tiger eyes stared, this is retreat. No. There would be talented people appearing in every generation and it was good to hide one's capabilities and bide one's time, but Shen Xian was no longer a youthful youth. He was already past his 20s and if he was not used and there was no suitable opportunity to return, even if the Luo family's group of people were trained, he could only stay at the border. It was probably the most tragic thing in the world to be a hero past his prime before his ambition was fulfilled. Talented people would be born in every generation and it was good to keep a low profile, but Shen Xian was no longer a green youth. He was already past his 20s and if he was not used, there would not be a suitable opportunity to return. Even if the Luo family's people were trained, they could only stay at the border. It was probably the most tragic thing in the world to be a hero past his prime before his ambition was fulfilled. Retreat in order to advance. There is a saying in the art of war. Father, what are you afraid of? Shen Miao did not give in at all. That pair of clear and indifferent eyes that were facing them, for the first time showed a provocative look, afraid of being unable to recover after a setback, afraid of retreating again and again until there is no more retreat, or afraid that time is fleeting and it would be difficult to stand out. These few words made Shen Xian's heart tighten. Not only Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were also stunned. Shen Xian watched Shen Miao attentively and he suddenly discovered that this delicate and soft-looking daughter seemed to have inherited the tenacity and arrogance in his bones. Moreover, Shen Miao chuckled, within 2 years, His Majesty will definitely summon father back to the capital. The day we enter the capital is the day we flourish. Chapter 408. The lights in the western courtyard of the Shin residence were also brightly lit throughout the night. Shin Gui and Shin Wan wanted to inquire about it, but Shin Xian directly let his trusted aide guard the courtyard doors so that not even a mosquito could fly in. Trying to find out what was said was easier said than done. In the room, Shin Qiu poured a cup of tea for Shin Miao and said, "Younger sister, speak slowly." Regarding military matters, the Shin family had Shin Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shin Qiu, but Shin Miao never seemed to have anything to do with these matters. A pampered young lady who was far away in the Ding capital, perhaps she did not even know the layout of the aristocratic families in the Ding capital. The matters of the military were treacherous and difficult to distinguish, and the forces involved were not as simple as it looked on the surface. Even officials could not differentiate clearly, much less Shin Miao. But when Shin Miao said it, she said it so logically that Shin Xian and wife could not help but raise their eyebrows. Abandon the Shin family's army and pick up the Luo family's army. Luo Shuiyan said, but the Shin family's army are all elites and the Luo family's army. Speaking of the troops that her father had led before, Luo Shuiyan was somewhat sad. How can it be compared to the Shin family's army? Although the Luo family army is scattered, it is important to be clean. Shin Miao said, there is already a traitor in father's Shin family army, and to bring such a troop to war, who knows if one would be stabbed in the back. As soon as he said this, the three of them fell silent. Everyone did not want to see a traitor among the soldiers who had been by their side through thick and thin, and who had single-handedly raised them up. Shin Xian said, I also thought about what Jiao Jiao said. Shin Qiu and Luo Shuiyan looked at Shin Xian at the same time. At this moment Shin Xian's suspicion from before faded away, and when he looked at Shin Miao, there was admiration in his eyes. If one is indecisive, one would definitely suffer from chaos. But what did you mean when you said in the carriage that you would summon me to the capital within 2 years? Correct. Shin Qiu also turned his head to look at Shin Miao. How did younger sister know that His Majesty would summon father back to the capital within 2 years? Who would be able to guess the emperor's thoughts? When Shin Miao said those words, it seemed to have some meaning. Luo Shuiyan suddenly became nervous. She was thinking about the long term, and the person who could understand the emperor's mind would definitely be someone around Emperor Wenhui. Could it be Prince Ding? Prince Ding and Shin Miao's past matters had been exposed, and Luo Shuiyan's greatest worry was that Shin Miao would be dragged into the muddy waters of the fight for the throne between the princes and be used as a bargaining chip for no reason. Shin Miao's eyes hung down. Within 2 years, Emperor Wenhui would naturally summon Shin Xian back to the capital. Because of the Ming Qi's tribute, there was the Qin country in the north and the Great Liang in the west, thus the Ming Qi which was caught in the middle was in a precarious situation. At that time Emperor Wenhui's health was not very good, the crown prince was bedridden, Prince Zhou and Prince Li fought till their heads were broken and bleeding, and Fu Xiu Yi's hidden big net was gradually spread out. Shin Xian was a loyal general and would definitely be used by Emperor Wenhui to deter the enemy countries. Just like in the previous lifetime, even if the imperial family was still suppressing the Shin family's army at that time, they still left a line, and Shin Xian would be squeezed dry by the imperial family to the last drop of oil. It was just that these words could not be said to the outside. Shin Miao gently smiled as she faced the different gazes of the few people. I only had a very realistic dream. In the dream, within 2 years, father would make a comeback and the formidable great general's name would not be disgraced. These words were actually somewhat perfunctory, but Shin Miao said it gently, and her pair of eyes were so clear that even if one did not believe it, their heart would soften by half. Whether one could be recalled back to the capital within 2 years, this was something that no one could say clearly. But whether it was 1 year, 2 years, or 3 or 4 years, it was indeed the best way to retreat to the northwestern region at this moment. Not only was it to make a comeback, it was also because the fight for the throne was currently at an intense time. If the Shin family were to stay in the Ding capital, even if they did not have military power, they would still be implicated. It was this logic to retreat bravely in the face of a crisis. Before achieving success, one must first protect one's family. Chapter 409. This was what Shin Xan thought. He smiled as he looked at Shin Miao. Since Jiao Jiao said that it is a dream, then the dream will definitely come true. Father believes you. He did not intend to delve into the reason at all. The words father believes you almost made Shin Miao cry. In the beginning, she wanted to marry Fu Xiu-yi no matter what, and Shin Xan actually tried his best to stop her. It was only after she threatened to kill herself that Shin Xan finally relented. The proud general, who had been giving orders all his life, revealed a dejected and helpless expression. He said, "Since you have chosen him, I believe you." So he pushed the Shin family to a dead end. Shin Miao closed her eyes and the tragic past disappeared. She said, "If father really believe what I said, then tomorrow one will request His Majesty to retreat to the Shaochun city." Tomorrow? Luo Shuiyan was surprised. Why so urgent? It is precisely because you are in such a hurry that His Majesty will think that father was dissatisfied with having the tiger tally taken away and acted in a fit of pique. I won't think too much, Shin Miao explained. Shin Qiu still wanted to say something, but Shin Xian ordered, "Then do it." Shin Xian. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat anxious. After all, these were all important matters. Even though what Shin Miao said was somewhat reasonable, but to make such a hasty decision was too sloppy. Shin Xian shook his head. "You and I have been on the battlefield for many years, but we are not as clear as Jiao Jiao." He looked at Shin Miao and there was some complexity in his eyes. Finally he stretched out his hand and rubbed Shin Miao's head. "If Jiao Jiao is a male, how many people in the world can be compared?" Shin Miao looked at him quietly. What she said today was something that an unmarried girl would never be able to think of. What kind of person was Shin Xian? Even though he was a boorish person, it did not mean that he did not have a brain. One feared that he had long seen the suspicious points on her. It was just that Shin Xian did not expose it. Even if he did, Shin Miao would not tell Shin Xian the secret of his rebirth. Perhaps this was the unconditional trust between relatives. Just like how Shin Xian had always been on her side in her previous life. The Shin family will be fine. Shin Miao promised. Father will present the report in the morning court tomorrow. Shin Xian smiled and pulled Luo Shuiyan up. Furen should also rest early. Luo Shuiyan wanted to say something, but when she saw Shin Xian's expression, she suddenly shut her mouth. She had followed Shin Xian for so many years and Shin Xian was naturally full of confidence. She had never seen such a heavy expression before. He was supposed to be a hero revered by the people, but he was going to be stripped of his military power and had to defend a small place at the border. No one was more aggrieved than Shin Xian at this moment. For the first time, her face softened as she supported Shin Xian. "All right." It was Shin Qiu who was lagging behind and looked at Shin Miao wanting to speak but hesitating. Finally he could not help but said, "Younger sister, you want father to rebel?" Among the Shin family, Shin Qiu was the clearest about the hostility in Shin Miao's bones. Prince Yu of the first rank coveted her, so she did not leave a single person in Prince Yu residence alive. The Jing family schemed against her and now she ended up dying without a complete corpse. The emperor had taken away the Shin family's tiger tally and Shin Miao's seemingly retreating action. Was it really just to protect herself? Eating the monarch's salary, one must be loyal to the monarch. Shin Miao smiled lightly. The Shin family has always been loyal to the monarch and loved the country, so how would such a thing happen? Eldest brother better not think too much. If the walls have ears and were to be heard by others, one fear that you and I will be in trouble. Shin Qiu paused before saying, "That would be the best." Younger sister. Do not do silly things. He then turned and walked out of the room. Shin Miao slowly sat down on her seat. She really wanted to rebel, but how to rebel without leaving behind a bad reputation was also a big matter. The most urgent matter was naturally to avoid disaster. But when she returned, she would definitely send a big gift to the Fu family. Chapter 410. One could only hope that the Fu family could swallow it. The matter of Shen Xian being stripped of his military power was lively for a day in the Ding capital, and on the second day, it was covered by new rumors. There were new things happening in Mingqi every day, and such a scene was not new. But on the second day, it was still Shen Xian's matter that was being discussed in the streets and alleys. It was said that on the second day after the formidable great general Shen Xian's military tally was taken away, he handed a memorial to Emperor Wen Hui in front of all the civil and military officials, proposing to bring the remaining frontline troops and the scattered Shen family guards to retreat to the Shaochun city. The once illustrious great general was going to defend a small place at the borders. Others felt that it was inconceivable, and Shen Xian himself felt even more aggrieved. To feel aggrieved but to take the initiative to submit a memorial, it was obvious that he was dissatisfied with Emperor Wen Hui's punishment and made the decision in a fit of pique. The storyteller in the restaurant explained the matter clearly and logically, saying that Emperor Wen Hui's expression changed on the spot in the throne room and threw the memorial at Shen Xian's face. One did not think that Shen Xian was still stubborn and stubbornly requested to retreat to the Shaochun city. Would the emperor tolerate one's pique? Even if one had great meritorious service, it would be useless. Did you not want to retreat to the small place at the borders? Good. Very good. Then you go and defend. Thus the entire Ding capital knew that the formidable great general would be leaving the capital for the Shaochun city tomorrow. Almost everyone in the restaurant was talking about the matter. Some people felt that Shen Xian did the right thing. The formidable great general had become a commander without an army and would be aggrieved to stay in the Ding capital. It was better to go far away and avoid getting tired of it. Some people, however, felt that Shen Xian was held up too high and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. It was obvious that he had deceived the emperor first and was lucky to keep his life, but he still dared to throw his face at Emperor Wen Hui. If it was not for Emperor Wen Hui's benevolence, if it was another ruler, one feared that he would have given a heavier punishment. In Kuai Huolu, Ji Yushu held his chin and looked at Gao Yang. What do you think this Shen Xian's intention is? To abandon the Shen family's army in the Ding capital? If that is the case, then one really have some boldness and is not a reckless martial artist. Gao Yang sighed. To retreat bravely in the face of a crisis, not everyone can do it. After drinking a mouthful of tea, Gao Yang then said to Xie Jingxing, who was silent at the side, "Why are you not speaking?" Xie Jingxing was interrupted and recovered to look at both of them. The Shen family moves too fast. Fast? Ji Yushu was somewhat puzzled. Xie Jingxing played with the teacup in his hand as a faint smile appeared on his lips. Pointing out a path to Shen Miao was to let the Shen family have a way out, but one did not expect that the Shen family's hands and feet would be so fast. He had just been stripped of his tiger tally yesterday, and today he went to the imperial court to ask for permission to withdraw. Shen Xian was a person who sought stability, and to be able to make Shen Xian make such a choice in such a short period of time, Shen Miao must have said something to him. Emperor Wen Hui let Shen Xian pack up and leave the capital. On the surface it was to embarrass Shen Xian, but he did not know that his thoughts were completely seen through by a little girl from the Shen family. If one knew about it, one did not know what kind of feeling one would have in one's heart. Xie Jingxing had a feeling that in this game of chess in Mingqi, Shen Miao would perhaps occupy a position that could lift something heavy as if it was light. It was just that. For him who was about to leave the capital, this did not have any meaning. Yushu will leave the capital with me. He said, Gao Yang, I will leave the rest to you. Ji Yushu touched his nose and showed some excitement. All right. Third older brother Xie. The pastries that the chefs here make are just too unpalatable. It is still third older brother's chefs that are good. At least one do not need to starve. Gao Yang rolled his eyes at him and said coldly, the entire Ding capital has been eaten by you. Since when do you starve? Finishing, he changed into a serious look and said to Xie Jingxing, "Do not worry. Leave this to me." Chapter 411. Xie Jingxing nodded his head. The same news naturally spread to other places. The Shen family was a large family in the Ding capital, and there were many colleagues who had dealings with the Shen family. Just because of Shen Xian's prestige, there were many officials who wanted to curry favor with him. But when the wall is down, everyone pushes it, and when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. When the person leaves, the tea cools. This time Shen Xian was obviously demoted and left the capital. When he went to the crowded Shen family's residence, other than a few families who were on good terms with Shen Xian, there was no one else. Shen Miao made a trip to Guangwentang. To leave the Ding capital, naturally she could not go to Guangwentang. Some time ago, because of Shen Miao's change in temperament, the students in Guangwentang were somewhat afraid of her. But seeing that the Shen family's military power was confiscated, there were unscrupulous faces that ridiculed her. It was just that Shen Miao did not even turn her head as she walked over, as if she did not hear anything, which made those noble children feel bored. When Feng and Ning saw her, she cried and grabbed her sleeves. What to do? Shen Miao, when will you return after this trip? Shen Miao was somewhat at a loss with Feng and Ning's tears. In all fairness, in the previous lifetime, because of her stupidity, the noble females in the Ding capital were not willing to be associated with her. In this lifetime, she had a cold heart and did not deliberately try to attract anyone's liking. This Feng and Ning accidentally became one of her friends. Even though her temperament was a little arrogant, she did not have any bad intentions. Sometimes looking at her age, Shen Miao would think of Wan Yu. She comforted, he will return not long later. Liar. Feng and Ning sobbed, I heard from father that this time General Shen had angered His Majesty. Now that His Majesty is angry, how could he return so quickly? Shen Miao, you have to write to me. By the time you return, will I be married? Shen Miao almost laughed out, but when she saw Feng and Ning's red eyes, she could not laugh anymore. She was clearer than anyone else about the Feng family's ending and Feng and Ning's ending. Even though the Feng family would not fall after 2 years, but... She patted Feng and Ning's shoulders, it is all right. I will be able to see the day you marry. Feng and Ning still wanted to say something but saw Pei Lang walking in with a book. Pei Lang was dressed in green as he stood on the stage. His gaze landed on Shen Miao and paused for a moment before saying, Shen Miao, come with me. If Shen Miao were to leave Guangwentang, it was only right for her to bid farewell to Pei Lang. Everyone did not feel that there was anything wrong. Feng and Ning unwillingly released Shen Miao's sleeves and allowed Shen Miao to follow Pei Lang out of the academy. Pei Lang brought Shen Miao to the triangular courtyard of Guangwentang. The teachers of Guangwentang all lived in the residences in the academy, and this was Pei Lang's own residence, so no one else could enter. He pushed the door and walked into the nearest study. Shen Miao followed in and closed the door at the right time. You're leaving. This time, Pei Lang didn't beat around the bush as usual and asked directly. Shen Miao nodded. Pei Lang's expression changed and he hesitated for a moment before saying, Lu Ying's matter, young lady Lu Ying has already been settled. Shen Miao interrupted his words, she is living very well in the embroidery shop. Her double-sided embroidery is outstanding, and in the future it would be good to rely on her skills to make a living as an embroidery mother. Perhaps she would be able to take in a few disciples. Pei Lang's expression gradually relaxed. Shen Xian's entire family was about to leave the capital and he was afraid that Lu Ying's matter had not been settled. He had relaxed but saw Shen Miao staring at his eyes, then how is the matter that teacher Pei has considered? Pei Lang was startled. The matter that Shen Miao was talking about was naturally the matter of him being a spy by Fu Xiuyi's side. That day at Kuaihualu, Pei Lang had already expressed his attitude, but as to how to proceed, he needed to think further. Hearing that, Pei Lang frowned. What do you want to say? Chapter 412. 2 years. Shen Miao said, within 2 years, I must return to the capital. At that time Teacher Pei must become His Highness Prince Ding's aide and the most dependable one. Pei Lang smiled, but there was some anger in his smile. Shen Miao, aren't you overestimating me? I am just a poor scholar and do not have anything. Even if I managed to sneak into His Highness Prince Ding's side, how would I be able to obtain the most dependable reputation? Teacher need not belittle yourself. Teacher is a 1,000-li horse and naturally there will be Bo Lu who appreciates you. Shen Miao smiled gently. If one is not a 1,000-li horse, one must see oneself as a 1,000-li horse in order to let Bo Lu appreciate. She lowered her voice and looked at Pei Lang provocatively. If teacher cannot do it, you guess how about I tell the story of Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residence to young Lady Lu Ying and say that the person who made me do all these was teacher. Does teacher think that young Lady Lu Ying would be moved to tears? You. Pei Lang was flustered. Shen Miao's words were clearly a threat, threatening that if he could not be Fu Xiuyi's left and right arm, then she would tell Lu Ying about these things. Lu Ying already had resentment towards the matter of that year, and if she was told that he was the one who arranged it, Lu Ying might return to Bao Xiang Lu in a fit of anger. Pei Lang said, I have never seen such a vicious and cunning female like you. The young female in front of him did not have any difference in age and would not respect him as a teacher. Pei Lang even had an illusion that Shen Miao was always suppressing him. Her provocations and threats seemed to contain some kind of inexplicable resentment, making Pei Lang somewhat embarrassed. Who would have thought that the seemingly gentle and delicate young female would have a heart that was even more terrifying and cold than the matrons in the house? Teacher must be joking. The ways of the world are difficult and one is only struggling to survive. Shen Miao smiled modestly, as if she was a disciple who was being admonished by a teacher. Her hands quietly took out an item from her sleeves and reached into Pei Lang's sleeves to hand it over to him. Pei Lang was startled for a moment as the soft fingertips rested on his wrist, but after a slight touch, it moved away as if it was a butterfly spreading its wings to fly. For some strange reason, Pei Lang actually had an impulse to keep her, but it was only for a moment before he sobered up and pinched the letter-like thing in his sleeves as he looked at Shen Miao in puzzlement. If teacher is free, naturally you can take a peek at the embroidery manor where young Lady Lu Ying is at. In addition, there are some other matters that the top hope teacher will follow in to do. Shen Miao said. Pei Lang's body stiffened and instead of being angry, he laughed. Shen Miao, you want me to be your puppet? A scholar has the pride of a scholar. Sir, you are so knowledgeable and have such a lofty and unyielding character. I admire you very much. If it were any other scholar, I would definitely not use such methods. Shen Miao raised her head and looked at Pei Lang's somewhat angry expression, but her lips raised. But does teacher still have a choice? It is all right if teacher is not willing to do it. Even if separated by 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers, I naturally have ways to tell stories to young Lady Lu Ying. She smiled gently, but her tone was sharp. Pei Lang felt an indescribable anger burning in his heart, and he felt inexplicably aggrieved. In front of Shen Miao, he did not have any dignity as a teacher. Every time he felt that he wanted to get angry, but when he saw Shen Miao's complacent look, he could not get angry. Pei Lang even thought that in the previous lifetime he owed Shen Miao something, and in this lifetime Shen Miao came to collect the debt. He suppressed the humiliation in his heart and said, "Can one meet your requirements by doing according to the top's instructions? I believe in teacher's ability." Shen Miao looked down. On that letter, it was the things that Fu Xiuyi would do in the next few years. Fu Xiuyi looked like he did not have any ambition on the surface, but he was secretly recruiting knowledgeable people. As for what kind of means to recruit and unearth intelligent people, no one was clearer than Shen Miao. Pei Lang was not an ordinary person, and as long as he revealed a little bit of his talent, naturally Fu Xiuyi would pick him. Chapter 413. And to get Fu Xiuyi's attention, one needed to plan step by step. In the entire letter, Shen Miao did not mention what she wanted Pei Lang to do and only told Pei Lang about the opportunity to get close to Fu Xiuyi. How to get Fu Xiuyi's trust would depend on what Pei Lang did. This was also the greatest trust that Shen Miao could give to Pei Lang. In the previous lifetime, Fu Xiuyi and Pei Lang were on the same boat, and now she was the first to discover this horse and even left a mark on it. She also let Fu Xiuyi have a taste of being betrayed by a close person. She swept a glance at Pei Lang and her heart suddenly felt somewhat apprehensive. The matter that was instructed was done, and she did not want to speak more with Pei Lang before turning around to leave. Shen Miao. It was Pei Lang who called out to her. He hesitated for a moment before finally spitting out 2 words, "Take care." Shen Miao was somewhat surprised but only lightly said, "Many thanks," before leaving. Only Pei Lang was left standing at the same spot, and his eyes were somewhat complicated as he stared at Shen Miao's back. When Shen Miao left Pei Lang's courtyard, she saw a soft white dumpling standing in the garden outside the academy. When he saw her, his eyes lit up as he ran over and cried out in surprise, "Older Shen's sister." Su Ming Lang rolled over like a dumpling. Shen Miao. In fact, Su Ming Lang was already over 10 years old this year, but one did not know if it was because the Su family had raised him too well that he was different from Su Mingfeng's mature older brother. Su Ming Lang looked more childish than a 5 or 6-year-old child. He ran a few steps before panting. Shen Miao walked in front of him and held his plump arms. "What is the matter?" "Older Shen's sister, you are leaving." Su Ming Lang puffed and puffed for a while. "Can I obediently wait here for you to return?" Shen Miao was stunned for a moment. When everyone here knew that Shen Xian was going to the Shao Chun city, the first thing they said was, "When will you return, or will you not return?" Everyone felt that once Shen Xian left, perhaps he would stay in the Shao Chun city forever. Su Ming Lang's first sentence was to wait for her return, as if he was certain that Shen Miao would definitely return to the Ding capital. Shen Miao found it interesting and tapped his forehead before deliberately teasing him, "Who said that I will definitely return? Perhaps I will not return." "Will not." Su Ming Lang raised his head and vowed, "Older sister will definitely come back." Shen Miao tilted her head and looked at him. When Su Ming Lang said those words, his eyes were firm and there was no trace of doubt. She asked, "Why are you so sure?" "Older brother Xia said that in less than 2 years, you will definitely come back." Su Ming Lang said excitedly. "Brother Xia?" Shen Miao's mind turned. Xia Jingxing. Even though father and eldest brother felt that after eldest sister's family left, they did not know when they would return. Father also said that General Shen had angered His Majesty this time, and one feared that His Majesty would not recall General Shen in this lifetime. Su Ming Lang's childish words carried no harm and did not pay attention to whether his words would hurt Shen Miao or not. He only cared about himself and said, "But when older brother Xia came to see eldest brother, he told eldest brother that General Shen would definitely return to the capital within 2 years. Xia Jingxing could actually guess her thoughts so accurately. Shen Miao's heart was somewhat frightened. Even though older brother Xia is a bad person and bullied me, bullied my eldest brother and bullied my father. But the words that he said were all true. This was the first time Su Ming Lang spoke so quickly, as if he was trying to prove something as he continued. He said that you will come back, then you will definitely come back? Older sister Shen, you will come back, right? As he spoke, his eyes were filled with hope. Shen Miao suddenly thought of Fu Ming and her heart softened as she smiled. What he said is right. I will come back. That is great. Su Ming Lang jumped up and said word by word with his short fingers, then I will wait here for older sister to come back. When older sister comes back, I will treat older sister to candied haws, small dough figurines, steamed sugar cakes. Shen Miao could not help but laugh again. When she was together with Su Ming Lang, it seemed that some of the hazy emotions would be swept away in an instant. It was as if time had become carefree. She said, you just listen to your father's words. It is just that. Regarding the matter of me coming back, the words that you said to me today must not be said to other people. If other people were to hear these words, they would parrot the crowd, and when it was passed to Emperor Wen Hui's ears, he might be able to detect some clues. It was fine if there was only one person in this world who knew the thoughts in her heart, but if there were too many people who knew, it would not be good. Su Ming Lang saw Shen Miao's solemn expression and immediately said obediently, "Understood. I only told older sister and will not tell others." He then whispered to Shen Miao, "Older sister Shen, but you cannot tell this to older brother Xie. It was me who eavesdropped. If older brother Xie knew that I eavesdropped, he would beat me up again." In the eyes of the second young master of the Su family, the elegant and noble little marquis of the Xie family was an out-and-out black-hearted bandit. Shen Miao said, "All right, I will not say." Chapter 4:14. Shen Xian's household started to pack their luggage overnight, and the most amazing thing was that before they left, they forced old Shen Furen to separate from the family in front of the Shen family. That day when Shen Xian and wife were summoned to the palace, Shen Miao's dispute with old Shen Furen at the residence's doors eventually fell into Shen Xian's ears, and naturally Shen Xian was unable to restrain his anger. The timing to throw stones at a person when they were down was too good that he did not even bother to maintain his face. Luo Shuiyan was even angrier at herself for being blind and treating this family of hoodlums with sincerity. Even though Shen Xian's military power was taken away, he was still a courageous person. When he was really stubborn, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull him back. The clan head would not be able to rush over, but the clansmen would still be there. Before old General Shen left, he hoped that this family would live in harmony, but at the end it still fell apart. Old Shen Furen brought out the skills that she had when she was a songstress in the marketplace and occupied more than half of old General Shen's residence and fields. Shen Miao did not stop this at all. After so many years, because it was not managed well, those shops and fields were not as pleasing as before, and it would be a burden to keep them by one side. Moreover, they were about to go to the Shaochun city, and these things were useless. Shen Xian was not lacking in money, as the emperor had bestowed a lot of rewards every year. Old Shen Furen originally thought that in the public accounts books, the whereabouts of Shen Xian's money had already been cleared clean, but did not know that at the last moment, Shen Miao actually found another account book from who knows where. It clearly stated the money that Shen Xian had handed over to the government all these years, as well as the money that Shen Xian had supplemented himself. In front of the clansmen, these could not be denied, and no matter what, old Shen Furen had to spit out some. Shen Miao's thoughts were simple: no matter how much she could get back, even if Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not even bother to look at these worldly possessions, it was good to disgust old Shen Furen. Old Shen Furen was really disgusted, to the point of falling sick, and Chen Roqiu was very angry in her heart. Now that Ren Wanyun did not care about the matter and she was the one managing the household, there was not enough money, and Shen Xian even took back a portion of it. In the future, if things were not going well, one feared that old Shen Furen would take it out on her. Shen Yu was also angered. These days she could only watch helplessly as Chen Roqiu was overwrought over the matter of money. Shen Yu's high and proud character that was previously raised had also changed. Originally she did not put money in her eyes, but now she felt that she wanted to fight for it. It was not good to say anything in front of the clansmen, so he looked at Shen Miao and pretended to be worried. One do not know when fifth younger sister will return from this trip. One heard that the Shaochun city is lacking in supplies, and it would be bad if the food is not good in the future. It is better to bring more money over. These words were faintly discernible ridicule of Shen Miao going to a bitter and cold place. Luo Shuiyan was about to get angry, but she saw Shen Miao lightly smiling. Correct, but the prices in the Ding capital are very high. In the future, without His Majesty's bestowment, second older sister must not spend as extravagantly as before. Her eyes landed on Shen Yu's wrist and smiled. After all, in the future, father will not give you a bracelet. Shen Yu was surprised for a moment and looked at the bracelet on her wrist before her face flushed red. That bracelet was none other than one of the bestowments that Shen Xian received. Originally Shen Xian's bestowments were confiscated and Shen Yu would pick some good-looking jewelry from it. Who knew that when she said those words, Shen Miao would directly say that the bracelet that she was wearing was Shen Xian's. Was this not slapping her face in public? But this bracelet was extremely precious and Shen Yu was not willing to take it off and return it to her. Shen Miao seemed to see her thoughts and smiled gently. Older sister must not return this bracelet. There is no logic in taking back something that is given out. One do not know if there will be such a good bracelet in the future. Chapter 4:15. At this moment, even Shen Wan, who was standing at the side without saying anything, had an ugly expression on his face. The meaning of Shen Miao's words was that it was impossible for Shen Wan to obtain such a good reward based on his own ability. Shen Wan would never be able to reach Shen Xian's level in his entire life. He pulled down his face and looked coldly at Shen Miao before saying to Chen Roqiu and Shen Yu, "Go back." He did not look at Shen Miao again before leaving. Since Shen Xian had already left the capital and his military power had been confiscated, there was no longer a need to put on an act of pretending to be brothers. Shen Wan would never look at those who did not have any value. Shen Gui also cupped his hands towards Shen Xian with some pride and said, "Eldest brother, this younger brother will withdraw first." The figure that brushed his sleeves and left seemed to have some arrogance. When Wan Yinyang saw this, she quickly pulled Shen Dongling and followed up. She had been acting like a little girl for decades and did not change because of the changes in Kai Yun Yuan. Shen Gui was a person who could not keep his cool and in his career, he relied on flattery to climb up. In terms of talent, he could not compare to his son Shen Yuan and in terms of temperament, he was not as tenacious as Shen Wan. He was also heartless and as long as he obtained a bit of sweetness, he would forget the bitterness he had suffered and was nothing to be feared. Shen Qiu was so angry that he said, "What kind of people are they?" Shen Miao gently smiled but did not answer. Not to mention Shen Wan and Chen Roqiu, but for Shen Gui's branch, within 2 years, Shen Yuanbo would die from smallpox. Shen Gui had already been drugged by Ren Wanyun and would not be able to have any more children in this lifetime. So what if he had money, power, and beauties? He didn't even have anyone to inherit his family business. There were 3 ways to be unfilial and having no descendants was the worst. At that time, old Shen Furen would only urge her 2 sons to quickly spread the branches and leaves. Did Chen Roqiu think that she would be able to sit back and relax? Evil people will be tortured by evil people. Leave this mess to the Shen family and let them clean it up themselves. When the matter of Shen Xian retreating to the Shaochun city reached Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi's ears, Emperor Wen Hui had already approved it. At this time, Fu Xiuyi naturally could not say anything else. The more he said, the more suspicious it would be. It was just that Shen Xian's sudden appearance made him feel strange. He could see clearly that after so many years, even though Shen Xian was a martial artist on the surface, he was not an impulsive person. Even if he was indignant that his tiger tally had been taken away, he would not have hurriedly submitted a memorial and left the capital the next day. Involuntarily, Fu Xiuyi remembered what Shen Yuan had reminded him before. "Your Highness, don't underestimate my 5th sister." But at that time, Fu Xiuyi did not take this sentence to heart. But now, for some reason, it resurfaced in his mind again. For Shen Xian to suddenly make this decision, could it be that Shen Miao was adding fuel to the fire? But how would a pampered young lady of the Ding capital take the initiative to go to such a cold place like the northwestern region? Fu Xiuyi sensed that something was wrong, but he could not tell what was wrong. He only felt that things should not develop like this. The advisor beside him asked, "Your Highness, are you worried about the formidable general?" Even though there was a change in the situation, but the Shen family's army had already dispersed and the tiger tally was taken back, so the formidable great general's role was not much. "Your Highness can rest assured and show off your skills." Fu Xiuyi recollected his thoughts and lightly responded. Even though Shen Xian had deviated from his plans, he was after all not an important chess piece. If it was an important chess piece, in the beginning when Shen Miao was in love with him, he could be used. But one did not know what happened afterwards, and that little bit of love dissipated, making him lose the opportunity to pull the Shen family onto his boat. But it was considered as a sigh of relief. If he really married Shen Miao, even if he had the Shen family's military strength, he would still be ridiculed by everyone. Fu Xiuyi was extremely proud in his bones, so how would he allow himself to have such a stain? Now those hypotheses were scattered along with Shen Xian's family leaving the capital. He said, "Go and recruit more people these days." Chapter 4:16. The advisor was stunned for a moment before cupping his hands in acknowledgement. Fu Xiuyi shifted his gaze. Since the game had already begun, the day of conquering the world was just around the corner. It was imperative to recruit more talents in the shortest time possible. Shen Xian left the capital early the next morning. When he left the capital, it was early in the morning and the sky was not even bright. Shen Xian had sneaked away. One reason was that he did not want to make things difficult for those colleagues that he had good relations with. If they were to send him off, it would be equivalent to going against Emperor Wenhui. The heart of an emperor was temperamental. It would not be good if he vented his anger because of this. Secondly, the Shaochun city was thousands of mountains and rivers away from the Ding capital, thus the earlier one traveled, the earlier one would arrive. However, even if they galloped at full speed, it would still take them more than half a year to arrive. Even though Shen Xian was taken in by the Shen family's army and only the frontline people were left, he still had a group of confidants in private. In addition to Shen Qiu's subordinates, Mo Qing and Ah Qi, he was not afraid of encountering any danger. Their journey had been pretty good. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian were initially worried that Shen Miao's body would not be able to withstand such a long journey and feared that she would feel uncomfortable in the middle of the journey. Who knew that Shen Miao did not even utter a single word of tiredness? Even Shen Xian kept on praising, "Jiao Jiao is indeed my daughter." Which female family in the Ding capital would have such tenacity? Luo Shuiyan rolled her eyes at him but felt even more guilty towards Shen Miao. She was a pampered girl, but she had to follow them and suffer hardships. Jing Zhe was holding on to the curtain of the carriage. Because it was her first time traveling far, she was somewhat surprised. One moment she pointed at the birds in the sky, the next moment she pointed at the hares in the forest and screamed. Seeing Shen Miao's calm look, she asked curiously, "Why does young lady not find it fresh? These things can't be found in the city." With that said, Guyu also knocked on Shen Miao's face and probed, "Young lady, look at it and there is not a bit of nostalgia." Luo Shuiyan, who was sitting in the carriage, was stunned. To leave the hometown that one had lived in for more than 10 years and go to a place that one had never heard of. The Shaochun city was definitely not as prosperous as the Ding capital, and one was unfamiliar with the people and the place. Any young lady would at this time show their attachment and reluctance to leave their hometown. However, Shen Miao was very calm from the beginning to the end. Sometimes, she even looked a little lively. Brisk? What was there to be happy about leaving one's home? Feeling Luo Shuiyan's gaze, Shen Miao was slightly surprised for a moment before smiling. Looking at the scenery outside the carriage, she said, "Father, mother and eldest brother are by my side, what is there to miss? Even if one were to stay in the Ding capital, one would not have any relatives and it would not be considered as a home." Hearing this, Luo Shuiyan's heart ached. Thinking that she had seen the ugly faces of the Shen family when she came back this time. For so many years, she had thrown Shen Miao into that family and thought that she was living well, but now it seemed like a big joke. Shen Miao most likely did not treat those people as family, otherwise she would not have said such words. Thinking of this, Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Miao into her embrace and said guiltily, "Correct. In the future Jiao Jiao will be together with father, mother and eldest brother. No one would dare to bully you." Shen Miao nestled in Luo Shuiyan's embrace and lowered her eyes to hide the trace of coldness in them. How could this be the first time he had to leave his hometown and travel alone? In her previous life, when she went to the Qin state as a hostage, the mountains were high and the rivers were long. When she brought along her trusted maids, how many of them died in foreign lands? The scenery at that time was just like now. It was obviously very blurry, but one could clearly remember the feeling of that moment. From the Ding capital to the Qin country and from the Qin country back to the Ding capital, both roads were very bleak. It was a pity that she thought that she was doing it for the sake of righteousness and for the common people of the world, but did not know how ridiculous and lame she was in the eyes of everyone. Chapter 4:17. Now she did not leave alone, and when she returns, she would not be alone. The mountain road was long and unknowingly the sky had turned dark. Because it was a mountain road, there were no inns on the mountain and one could only lodge at a farmer's house. Fortunately, that farmer's family had a warm-hearted temperament and warmly received everyone. They even cooked a lot of food and wine. Because they had to hurry on with their journey, Shen Xian and the rest did not dare to drink alcohol as they were afraid that drinking would cause trouble and delay the next day's departure. It was Shen Miao who did not know if it was because her mood was good or because the plum blossom wine that the farmer's family brewed was sweet and intoxicating that after drinking a few cups, her cheeks turned into a peach color. Why did Jiao Jiao drink so much? Luo Shuayan initially did not notice, but when she saw it clearly, she could not help but turn pale with fright. Seeing Shen Miao's hands supporting her cheek with a drowsy look, she quickly reached out to check her head. Most likely older sister does not know the power of this wine. The female owner of the farmer's family smiled. The plum blossom wine that we brew ourselves has a sweet taste, but the after effect is strong. Our family's girl often drinks too much and would be drunk. But one would be fine after a sleep and would not feel dizzy the next day. Furen need not worry. Luo Shuayan then felt relieved. Shen Qiu looked at Shen Miao's somewhat drunk look and felt it was funny, did not think that younger sister would also get drunk one day. Really interesting. When Shen Qiu returned this time, he saw a calm and gentle Shen Miao. She was so mature that Shen Qiu would sometimes have the illusion that Shen Miao was the older sister. Sometimes he would miss the Shen Miao of the past. Even though she was willful and impolite, she still had the temperament that a young lady should have. Now looking at her appearance, it made Shen Qiu recall the Shen Miao of the past and unknowingly felt some familiarity. Brat. Shen Xian kicked Shen Qiu. Your younger sister is already drunk to this extent and you still make trouble. Shen Qiu quickly stuck out his tongue and pretended to be afraid as he begged for mercy. The whole family, including the farmer's family, were all lively and happy. Where was the disappointment and helplessness of leaving one's hometown? Shen Miao's hands supported her chin as she squinted at the scene in front. Even though this plum blossom wine was intoxicating, she was still somewhat sober. He was indeed very happy today. Everything went according to the plan. In fact, other than letting Shen Xian stay away from the whirlpool of the Ding capital, it was also because there would be a smallpox outbreak in the Ding capital in a year's time. Even though nothing happened in the previous lifetime, she was not willing to let her family take any risks at all. Staying away from the Ding capital meant staying away from danger. Even if he wanted revenge, he had to protect his family first. The lively dinner lasted until late at night before dispersing. The enthusiastic owner of the farm arranged enough rooms for the few of them. Originally Luo Shuayan wanted to share a room with Shen Miao, but Shen Miao insisted on staying in the room next to the wall of the farm and even had to sleep alone. It was a separate room, and it was far away from the others. If they moved in, they would be separated from Luo Shuayan and the others. Shen Xian initially felt that it was not good, and if there was danger, he feared that he would not be able to rush over to rescue, but he did not know what was wrong with Shen Miao that she insisted on staying in that room even though she was drunk. When the mistress of the farmer's family saw this, she smiled and said, "Sister, you probably want to see the flowers outside the wall. The flowers are very beautiful under the snow and all young ladies like it. Furen need not worry. Even though our place is small, there are no bandits or robbers. If you are worried about sister, it is all right to set up a tent outside and find a few more guards. Only then did everyone realize that when they opened the window of the house against the courtyard wall, they could see a large snow-white garden. There were still winter plum blossoms in the garden that had yet to wither. Under the clear moonlight, the shadows of the blossoms swayed on the snowy ground. It was a very beautiful scene. Shin Qiu was angry and funny at the same time and pinched Shin Miao's nose, delicate bag. No wonder you are called Jiao Jiao. You are drunk and still looking forward to a place with good scenery. Chapter 418. Luo Shuiyan hit down Shin Qiu's hand and said angrily, "Do not move around." She then looked at the somewhat confused drunk Shin Miao and shook her head, "Not willing to sleep with me and still want to sleep at such a far place. Let Mo Qing, Ah Qi, and the rest set up a tent outside the courtyard for the night. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu will come out after serving young lady to change." This farmer's house was not like the previous residence in the Ding capital, as there was a bedroom and an outer room that allowed Jing Zhe and Gu Yu to sleep on the small couch in the outer room. Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xian were not harsh people, and there was no reason for Jing Zhe and Gu Yu to sleep on the floor to serve Shin Miao. Thinking that this farmer's house was not big and with Ah Qi, Mo Qing and the rest guarding outside, there would not be any problem. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu helped Shin Miao to change her clothes and washed her face before leaving the house. Mo Qing, Ah Qi, and the rest who had set up the tent in the courtyard also prepared to take turns to keep watch. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu went up to warn them again before leaving. In that beautiful little room, there was only Shin Miao left alone. And Shin Miao, who was supported by Jing Zhe to climb up the couch, suddenly climbed up from the couch. The after effects of the plum blossom wine finally surged up at this moment, and Shin Miao's clear eyes were in a state of chaos. She swayed as she stood up and wanted to walk towards the window, but she stumbled and almost knocked into the corner of the table and fell down. In the darkness, a pair of strong arms held her up and one could vaguely smell the faint fragrance of the other party. A familiar voice sounded beside her ears with a hint of ridicule, "TSK, actually pouncing onto another's body." Shin Miao took the opportunity to wrap her arms around his waist to make herself stand more stable, but did not realize that this action of hers made the latter's body stiffen. After a moment, there was a "chi" sound and a flame sprang up. That person did not know where to find a match and lit the oil lamp in the room. The windows of the farmer's house were all wooden carvings. Those were real wooden carvings, and there was not even a layer of white paper. Even if there was a lamp in the room, one would not be able to see it from the outside. Thus the few people in the courtyard did not notice any abnormalities in the room. Under the blurry light, he was able to see the man's facial features clearly. Snow-white fox fur coat, dark red embroidered clothes, red lips, white teeth, a pair of black eyes like peach blossom. The embroidered clothes in the night had a graceful bearing. If it was not Xie Jingxing, who else could it be? Shin Miao was surprised for a moment and said, "Xie Jingxing." When she said this, her body became heavy and she accidentally leaned against Xie Jingxing, almost hugging him. Xie Jingxing frowned. "Such a strong smell of alcohol, how much did you drink?" He looked at Shin Miao and said with some disdain, "I sent you off with good intentions, but who knew that I would meet a drunkard?" "You're the one who's drunk," Shin Miao immediately retorted. "All right, you know me and still talk back to me. It seems that you are not drunk," Xie Jingxing said as he helped Shin Miao to the couch. Then, he brought the lamp closer to him. Under the dim light, Shin Miao was wearing a plain white inner garment and her hair was disheveled as she looked over ignorantly. It was completely different from her usual astute and calm appearance, and she really had the appearance of a delicate and pitiful young lady. Xie Jingxing thought for a moment and finally could not hold it back and fiercely pinched her face. Shin Miao glared at him angrily. It was rare to see her with such a childish look, and Xie Jingxing felt that it was interesting. He only thought that Shin Miao was drunk, and as the saying goes, wine spits out the truth. Perhaps he would be able to ask something. "Who am I?" Xie Jingxing, Shin Miao quickly answered. know what kind of person Xie Jingxing is? Shen Miao stared at him and slowly frowned but did not speak. Xie Jingxing felt that she was looking at him strangely and thought that this girl was cursing him in her heart. Who knew that Shen Miao suddenly smiled and said, "A wonderful and stunning character." Chapter 419. Xie Jingxing, he stared at Shen Miao thoughtfully and asked, "Are you pretending to be drunk?" The little marquis of the Xie family, a young talent, an eternal character, a heroic age. The words at the back gradually became softer, as if she could not remember. Xie Jingxing initially had some suspicions, but when he saw that Shen Miao did not seem to be pretending, he felt somewhat strange and raised his brows. "Did not think that in your heart, you are so satisfied with me." He leaned closer and teased, "Could it be that you admire me?" Shen Miao reached out and pushed his head away. Xie Jingxing was somewhat speechless. If it was on normal days, it would be very interesting to tease Shen Miao. But now that Shen Miao was so drunk that even the eternal character evaluation came out, it would be very boring to tease her now. He said, "Originally wanted to see you one last time. Since you are this drunk, forget it. Let us part here." He was about to leave after speaking, but who knew that with a plop sound, Shen Miao fell from the couch to the ground again. Xie Jingxing first wanted to help Shen Miao up but then stopped and crossed his arms at his chest as he stood calmly at the side. He watched Shen Miao struggling on the ground and after admiring for a while, he then said, "One should really let you see your current appearance." Shen Miao was dizzy from drinking and her body was soft, so how would she be able to stand up? She flopped on the ground for a long time but to no avail. Xie Jingxing finally could not stand it anymore and mercifully helped her up before sitting on the couch. He then heard Shen Miao saying, "Li Gonggong, Ben Gong want to see the fireworks." In the quiet night, Shen Miao's words were exceptionally clear. Li Gonggong, Ben Gong want to see the fireworks. The charcoal fire in the room seemed to have solidified. Xie Jingxing's originally curled lips slowly lowered down and his pair of peach blossom eyes were no longer filled with a romantic smile. He slightly squatted down and his line of sight was at the same level as Shen Miao, who was sitting on the couch. It was a gentle action but his eyes gradually turned cold. He said, "What did you say?" Shen Miao opened her eyes and looked at him. Under the warm light, her eyes became clearer and in those clear eyes, there was a hint of drunkenness, which made the young and inexperienced young lady suddenly have a few more womanly charm. She delicately and haughtily stretched out a hand, as if to place it on the hand of a palace servant. She ordered, eunuchly, "I want to see the fireworks. Go and call the crown prince and princess over." "Crown prince? Princess?" Xie Jingxing stared at Shen Miao in front of him. When he smiled, he was as moving as the spring flowers and autumn moon. When he didn't smile, he was as dangerous as a silent abyss. Anyone who looked at him would feel like they were being mocked. He looked at Shen Miao and as he looked, he suddenly chuckled. Even though there was a smile on his face, there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. He gently hooked up Shen Miao's chin and when he did such a lecherous action, it was graceful and natural, so gentle that it made one drown in his dark eyes. He asked, "Shen Miao, do you want to be the empress?" Shen Miao blinked at him and said, "That was originally mine." "Yours?" "Ben Gong's." Xie Jingxing slowly tightened his fingers and Shen Miao frowned in dissatisfaction as she felt pain on her chin. "Little girl, you already have the ambition to be the empress at such a young age." His tone was unclear but his eyes were dangerous. "A woman with ambition is the most beautiful. But you are still not a woman." Shen Miao also looked at him. Under the bright moonlight, the snowy shadows, the swaying plum blossoms, the two people facing each other. It should have been a romantic scene with beautiful flowers and full moon, but the atmosphere of danger and ambiguity was overwhelming, mixed with probing and danger. She was like a young lady who was raised pampered. If it was an ordinary female, when she grew older, she would only worry about marrying a good husband. But she had been patiently planning step by step, scheming against the world behind her back. Even though one had guessed that she had ambition, but when one really heard it, one could not help but be surprised. Chapter 420. That little girl was covered in thorns. From an idiot to a chess player, from the eye-catching daughter of a general's wife to a noble daughter who had lost her power, it seemed that she had never changed. It was this docile yet ferocious gaze that was filled with nobility and pride. She was born with the bearing of someone who had been in a high position for many years. Her words, uniquely, "I want to go see the fireworks," were long and lingering, like a bell ringing in the quiet night, ringing in people's hearts. Even if it was a dream, her aura could be said to be that of an empress. Right now, she was still a little girl. After a few more years, her beauty and elegance would be hard to conceal. Perhaps she would really have the bearing of a motherly model of the world. Xie Jingxing slowly released the hand that was holding Shen Miao's chin and glanced at her with difficulty. Pausing, he was about to get up and leave but heard Shen Miao muttering, "Xiao Lizi, go and bring Ben Gong's cloak over. Ben Gong is cold." In an instant, he changed from eunuch Li to little Li. Xie Jingxing's originally complicated emotions were stirred up by her and he did not know whether to laugh or cry. He asked, "You order me cold?" Shen Miao looked at him aggrievedly. Xie Jingxing took a deep breath and suppressed the thought of picking Shen Miao up and beating her up. He took off his cloak and threw it on Shen Miao. Shen Miao wrapped his cloak and gave him a smile. "Later Ben Gong will reward you with a few bolts of satin." His favor was boundless. Xie Jingxing looked at her expressionlessly. "Many thanks for Nyang Nyang's love. This official will take his leave." Just as he was about to leave, Shen Miao grabbed his sleeve. The Shen Miao tonight was too abnormal. Xie Jingxing had never dreamt that the drunk Shen Miao would be like this. He thought that he could take advantage of the drunkenness to bully Shen Miao, but in the end, it seemed that he was the one being bullied. The dignified young master of the Xie family was being ordered around like a eunuch. "Eunuch Li. Little Li." Shen Miao pulled Xie Jingxing's sleeves and pulled him down until Xie Jingxing squatted down and was at eye level with her before she was satisfied. She released her hand and grabbed Xie Jingxing's collar. Xie Jingxing was baffled by Shen Miao's actions. One could only hear Shen Miao muttering to herself. Originally in the previous dynasty, when the princess was widowed, the male attendants were kept. "Since His Majesty doesn't treat me well, I'll treat it as my husband's death and find a male companion." When Xie Jingxing heard the first part of the sentence, he couldn't understand it, but when he heard the latter part, he found it unbelievable. He stared at Shen Miao. "In your dream, is it a disfavored and crippled empress? It's not falling out of favor." When Shen Miao heard it, she glared at him. Xie Jingxing nodded his head and said lazily, "Cursing the death of one's husband after falling out of favor. You must be the poison empress. But you look really good." Shen Miao suddenly said, "Are you the new gigolo?" Xie Jingxing, that princess of the previous dynasty, found a handsome male, and Ben Gong had seen the portrait before, but felt that he was not as beautiful as you. Shen Miao said, "If you follow Ben Gong will ensure that you will not have to worry about food and clothing in the lower half of your life." Xie Jingxing was initially shocked by Shen Miao's words of gigolo, but when he heard the latter sentence, he was completely stunned. This is being treated as a male pet. He was still in a daze when he saw the hand that was grabbing his collar suddenly exerted strength, and there was a soft thing that stuck to him. The cold little mouth licked his lips, and after a nibble, a mouthful of sweet plum blossom wine came to his face. "From now on, you are Ben Gong's person." Shen Miao released her hand and looked at him with a dignified smile. When Xie Jingxing recovered to his senses, he only had one thought. He wanted to strangle this female in front of him. But just at this moment, a whistle was suddenly heard from outside. That was the signal given by his people. Mo Qing and the rest had noticed the movements. Xie Jingxing gritted his teeth and glanced at Shen Miao before flying out. Ah Chi opened the door but saw that there was nothing inside. He scratched his head and said, "There is no one. Most likely there was a mistake." Mo Qing frowned. In the snow where the plum blossoms were swaying, there was a bit of uneasiness on the dark red-robed handsome youth's face. When the middle-aged man beside saw the situation, he could not help but ask, "Master seems to be somewhat uneasy. Just now, what happened inside?" He only went to bid farewell to the young lady of the Shin family, so why was there something wrong when he came out? The meaning in the red-clad youth's eyes was unclear. Tai Yi, I look like. Tai Yi was puzzled, like what? Forget it. He gritted his teeth and replied, "Go." Chapter 421. In the early morning of the second day, the sky had just brightened when Jingzhe and Guyu came over to help Shin Miao wake up. When they entered the room, they saw Shin Miao sleeping on the couch and the blanket was missing and her body was covered with a fox fur coat. Both of them suddenly turned pale with fright. Yesterday when she left, she did not leave behind any fox fur coat, so where did this fur coat come from? Jingzhe woke Shin Miao up and after Shin Miao woke up, she was also at a loss when she saw the fox fur coat. Even though the after effect of the plum blossom wine was strong, it was like what the female owner of the household said, one would not feel dizzy the next day. It was true that one's head was not dizzy, but one was unable to remember anything that happened last night. She did not even know why she wanted to stay in this room alone. Guyu took that snow-white fox fur coat and said, "Young lady, where did this fox fur coat come from?" Shin Miao took the fox fur coat and shook her head. "Young lady's clothes boxes are all here. Could it be that young lady was drunk and dug it out from the boxes?" Jingzhe asked tentatively, "But why is it that it is the first time seeing this fox fur coat?" They did not think in any other direction. After all, Shin Miao was perfectly fine staying here and there were guards guarding outside last night, so nothing had happened. It was just that this fox fur coat came out of nowhere. Shin Miao said, "Take it out and ask the farmer if it is their family's." Upon seeing the owner of the household, the owner shook his head when he heard it. "Our family does not have such a good fox fur." Most likely elder sister had misremembered. Shin Qiu took the fox fur coat and said, "This fox fur coat does not look like an ordinary item. Younger sister, where did this come from? One fear that it is worth a lot of money. The workmanship also looks gorgeous, but the tailoring is not very good. One feel that it is too big for you to wear." Shin Miao took the fox fur coat and her heart was very puzzled. She really did not remember when she had such a cloak. But hearing that Shin Qiu said that it was worth a lot of money, she naturally took it back and lied without a change in expression. Thinking about it, it seemed that it was bought in the Ding capital. "Jingzhe, keep it." Jingzhe was thinking hard about when did Shin Miao bought the cloak, and when she heard her say that, she did not bother to ponder and immediately said yes before keeping the cloak into the box. Shin Miao shook her head. No matter where did the cloak came from, but in this trip to the Shaochun city, one feared that there would be a lot of places that needed money. Now that Shin Xian was not like the past, if there was a day where he was stretched to make ends meet, he could still exchange this cloak for a lot of money to spend. Thinking of this, those messy conjectures became dispensable. Time always passed very quickly. The different state of mind determined the different scenery one would see. Even though the Shaochun city was far away and the road was filled with high mountains and meandering rivers, it was bumpy and muddy. Even though they were travel-worn, Shin Miao did not say that she was tired. Those soldiers in the front of the Shin family's army who were regarded as burdens, followed Shin Xian's remaining trusted aides, and because of the hardships they shared along the way, they became closer to everyone. Leaving the capital in the second month of spring, at the beginning of August, she finally arrived at the Shaochun city. The Shaochun city was located at the border of Mingqi and was a very small city. If one were to talk about the highest official in the city, it would be the garrison general Luo Sui, Grand General Luo. All along, Luo Sui had been protecting the people of the Shaochun city to live and work in peace and contentment, but because it was too far away from the Ding capital, everyone was well aware that this kind of job was not a good one. In addition, after so many years, the Luo family's army was almost scattered, and the Luo family only had some prestige in the Shaochun city. When the guards at the city gates saw Luo Shuaiyan taking out the Luo family's identity token, they were suddenly in awe and sent someone to pass the news to the Luo family. The Shaochun city was only such a big place, and when the Shen family brought a group of people into the city, it was immediately noticed by the surrounding commoners. One after another, they went forward to inquire and found out that it was the Luo family's married daughter who brought her family over. Immediately there was a wave of liveliness. Chapter 422. Jingzhe quietly lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked at the outerwear before saying to Shen Miao, "Young lady, this is the Shaochun city." Shen Miao glanced outside. The Shaochun city was not as unbearable as what the noble females in the Ding capital said. Even though it was a small place at the borders, it looked lively. It was just that the sandstorm was a little strong. Because of the sandstorm, the women's skin was slightly darker, and they were not as delicate as the women in the capital. Perhaps it was because of the open culture of the people, they were all lively and quick-witted. Some of them even looked a little mischievous, making people feel that they were full of vitality. There were peddlers and stalls along the streets, so there was no shortage of goods. The more Jingzhe looked, the happier she became, and the original apprehension was swept away. "Young lady, the Shaochun city and the Ding capital are not much different. Does Jiao like it here?" Luo Shuaiyan asked uneasily. What she was most afraid of was that Shen Miao would not be used to living here. Luo Shuaiyan grew up in the Shaochun city, so of course there was no problem. Shen Qiu and Shen Xian were military generals who had been on the battlefield and would not say anything more. She was just a spoiled daughter that she needed to worry about. Shen Miao smiled, "It's good here." Only then did Luo Shuaiyan feel relieved. She smiled and said, "Let's go to your maternal grandfather's house. You haven't seen your grandfather since you became a governor. You have 2 uncles, 3 older brothers, and 1 older sister. They're all good people. I'm sure they'll like you very much when you get there." Luo Furen died early, and Luo Sui had been a widower for so many years. The Luo family had 3 siblings, and Luo Shuaiyan was the youngest. When Shen Miao was born, the Luo family came all the way to the Ding capital to see her once, but after that, because the Shaochun city was too far away and one could not leave this side, Shen Miao and the Luo family had never met before. In the previous lifetime, Shen Miao's impression of the Luo family was also very vague, and now that she heard Luo Shuaiyan saying it, she also smiled. At this moment, many people had already gathered in front of the Luo family's gate. There were commoners who came to watch the show, and of course, there were also people from the Luo family. Luo Sui stood at the very front, and behind him were 2 middle-aged couples. Behind the couple were 3 youths and a young girl. The youths all had upright features and were awe-inspiring. Although they were still young, they had the demeanor of a valiant general. The girl's skin was a healthy wheat color. She had a pair of almond-shaped eyes and a small diamond-shaped mouth. One look and you could tell that she was a shrewish person. She pulled the youth beside her and asked, "Big brother, what kind of person do you think my cousin is?" The young man who was stopped by her had a good temperament. He said warmly, "He should be a good person." "What do you mean by not bad? Can't you make it clearer?" The young girl was unrelenting. "Is she pretty? You see those Ding capital young ladies that came to our Shaochun city, each and every one of them are very beautiful, but their temperament is so delicate that it makes one feel disgusted. Moreover, the official's young lady that came to the Shaochun city as a guest last year said that she knew Biao's younger sister." She lowered her voice, but because of her crisp voice, it could still be heard. One heard that Biao's younger sister's reputation in the Ding capital is not good. Tanner. A loud shout interrupted the young female's words, and it was Luo Sui who opened his mouth and stared fiercely at that young female called Tanner. The young female quickly straightened her body and stuck out her tongue and no longer spoke. She did not speak, but a slightly younger and more lively lad came over and pulled Tanner's hand, saying, "Grandpa is so biased. This cousin has not come yet, but he is already protecting her like this. I want to see what kind of person this Biao younger sister is." Shen Xian had been fighting in the northwest region all year round and would pass by the Shaochun city whenever he went to the northwest border, thus he would come over every year. Shen Qiu and the Luo family also knew each other. If one were to say that the person that the Luo family was most interested in was Shen Miao, whom they had never seen since she was born. The world was so big that it could be said that it was big, but it could also be said that it was small. In the Shaochun city, there would occasionally be some officials who were demoted or passing by, so they would know a thing or two about the rumors in the Ding capital. What kind of person was Shen Miao? Regarding the rumors of the idiot D daughter, it was also famous in the Shaochun city. Chapter 423. Hearing of one's reputation was not as good as seeing. Today one could finally see it. There were so many commoners surrounding outside, and speaking of which, the majority of them wanted to see what Shen Miao looked like. Just as this young female and that youth were whispering, a line of horse carriages slowly came over, and the ones riding at the front were Shen Xian and Shen Qiu. Behind them was a group of soldiers. "Father." Shen Xian got off the horse and Shen Qiu quickly followed up and ran to Luo Sui with a smile, "Waizu." Luo Sui's gaze swept across the father and son pair before landing on the horse carriage. After all, it was not nice to see too much, as Luo Sui wanted to see his own granddaughter the most. A slightly plump Furen with a friendly smile said, "Youngest Gu and Jiao Jiao should be in the horse carriage. One fear that they are tired after walking for such a long time." Just as the words were spoken, one saw the curtain of the horse carriage being lifted and Jing Zhe and Guyu helped Luo Shuiyan down. Luo Shuiyan then reached out to the horse carriage and a young female came down. That young female bent down from the horse carriage, and when she raised her head, a pretty face was revealed. When she turned her head back, Luo Shuiyan was already holding her hand and walking forward. "Jiao Jiao, let us go home." The young female called Tanner opened her mouth but did not speak. The Shaochun city was windy and dry, thus the young females had dark skin and it was rare to see fair skin, not to mention such a white and juicy young female. That young female's brows were very delicate, and because of her snow-white skin, it was even more picturesque. Black eyebrows, black eyes, a small nose, and rosy lips. However, the most surprising thing was her temperament. She was held by Luo Shuiyan and looked like a very delicate young female, but under Luo Shuiyan's valiant and heroic bearing, she did not seem as weak as the iris flower. Instead, she looked more dignified and noble, as if she was the leader. The surrounding commoners and the Luo family were somewhat dumbfounded. One's bearing was important when looking at a person, but a woman's aptitude was the most important and beauty was secondary. This Shen family's young female's aptitude was more captivating than her appearance. She followed Luo Shuiyan step by step until she was in front of Luo Sui. Luo Sui was tall and had deep eyes and a high nose. Compared to Shen Xian's boorishness, he appeared more serious and unreasonable. He frowned as he stared at Shen Miao. With such a cold look, if it was a young lady with less courage, she would have been scared to tears. Moreover, Shen Miao looked like a delicate and noble young lady from the Ding capital, so everyone thought that she would be scared out of her wits. Tanner and the young man beside her raised the corners of their mouths to watch the show. Shen Miao raised her head and looked at Luo Sui. Her brows relaxed and her body was soft, apparently she was not nervous because of Luo Sui's reaction. Her eyes were calm and she even smiled slightly. That kind of attitude of a superior towards a subordinate actually made Luo Sui stunned for a moment. The attitude of the superior towards the inferior. The Luo family in the Shaochun city was in existence like the Lord of the Earth City, so how could there be someone in a higher position? After Luo Sui was stunned for a moment, he suddenly laughed out loud. When she smiled, the nervous people around her were all shocked. Luo Sui patted Shin Miao's head and shouted energetically, "Girl, why did not call me?" "Grandfather," Shin Miao answered meekly. Luo Shuiyan heaved a sigh of relief. Luo Sui and Shin Xian were different. Shin Xian pampered Shin Miao to the heavens, but Luo Sui was a strict father since young. Even she herself had some fear of Luo Sui when she was young. Now that Luo Sui was older, he was not as dignified as before, but the habit of scaring young ladies had not changed. She was afraid that Shin Miao would be scared, but fortunately Shin Miao's reaction was not that big. Faintly, Luo Shuiyan's heart was somewhat proud. Shin Miao's attitude made Luo Shuiyan sigh of relief, but at the same time, it made the surrounding people somewhat surprised. The young ladies from the Ding capital did not seem to only know how to cry and live extravagantly, and seemed to have some courage. Tanner was unconvinced as he whispered to the young youth, "Must be pretending not to be afraid." Chapter 424. The oldest youth with the best temperament looked at Shin Miao thoughtfully and did not speak. Luo Shuiyan then pulled Shin Miao forward to introduce her. Other than Luo Sui, the Luo family had two other sons and they were Shin Miao's two Jojo, Luo Lianying and Luo Liantai. Luo Lianying's wife was Madame Yu, a gentle and honest woman. He gave birth to two sons, Luo Ling and Luo Sa. Shin Miao's second Jiu Shu Luo Liantai's wife was Madame Ma. Her maiden family did business and was shrewd, giving birth to a pair of siblings. The elder sister was called Luo Tan, and the younger brother was called Luo Qian. Luo Ling was Shin Miao's eldest Biao older brother. This Biao older brother was 18 this year and had a gentle and honest temperament, exactly the same as Madame Yu. When he saw him, he would greet him gently and politely and was a very considerate person. And second Biao older brother, Luo Sa, was 17 years old and also Luo Ling's younger twin brother. He looked at Shin Miao and snorted coldly before ridiculing, "Young lady of the Ding capital, can she withstand the sandstorms of the Shaochun city?" He was kicked by Luo Lianying. That Luo Tan was 16 this year and had some suspicions towards Shin Miao. Her attitude was not warm and was more curious. Luo Tan's younger brother was the same age as Shin Miao and kept sizing Shin Miao up. He had a round face and was somewhat picky. After greeting the Luo family's circle of people and recognizing them, Luo Sui let Luo Shuiyan bring them to the residence first. The Luo residence was a place where a large family lived together, and they all lived in harmony and love. The Shin family was settled in the courtyard that Luo Shuiyan had before she was married, so they could stay there. When the servants went to tidy up the room, everyone talked in the hall. After the initial excitement, it was time to get down to business. The Luo family and the Shin family were different. When the Shin family was in the Ding capital, because Shin Gui and Shin Wan took the path of civil officials and was different from Shin Xian, naturally there would not be any discussions in court. In addition, they weren't blood relatives to begin with, and there was a layer of separation between them, so these private matters were even less likely to be brought up. The Luo family was different as they were all one family. Not only Luo Lianying and Luo Liantai could listen, Luo Ling and the other juniors could also listen and even the females could listen. After Shin Xian's family came, they naturally wanted to listen to it. "Yener, what plans do you have for the future after returning to the Shaochun city?" Luo Sui asked. Shin Xian had previously written a letter to inform about the matter of his tiger Tally being taken away and retreating to the Shaochun city. It was just that they were too far away at that time to discuss it. Now that they were right in front of him, he had to ask about it. Luo Shuiyan smiled and said, "Why does father ask like this? Since one came to the Shaochun city, naturally one should live well here." Regarding the matter of reviving the Luo family's army, Luo Shuiyan and Shin Xian still did not know how to tell Luo Sui. With Luo Sui's inflexible character, he would need some grinding. Third younger sister. It was Luo Yening who opened his mouth. He glanced at Shin Xian and hesitated for a moment before asking, but the Shin family army was taken in just like that. Is there really no turning back? They were generals, so they understood the significance of an army to a general. Shin Xian had been on the battlefield for so many years and it was not easy for him to suddenly be an idle ordinary person. If it was them, they would also be indignant. Shin Xian cupped his hands and said, "Eldest brother, rather than complaining, it is better to let nature take its course. The Shaochun city is also very good. I also want to spend some time at the place where Shui Yan lived." Hearing that, Luo Sui looked at Shin Xian a few more times and the serious expression on his face eased up a little. "It is rare that you have changed your temperament." Everyone was clear about Shin Xian's fiery and straightforward temperament, so for him to say such peaceful words was indeed out of everyone's expectations. Shin Miao looked at the Luo family's different expressions and suddenly asked, "Grandfather, one heard that there are 2 Ju at the Shaochun city's border." Chapter 425. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings instantly became silent. A moment later, Madame Ma reacted. She was a straightforward person and said with a smile, "Jiao Jiao, don't be afraid. Those Turks are outside the city and don't dare to come in. Even if they come in, our Luo family soldiers can chase them away. They've been safe and sound for so many years. There's nothing to fear." Shin Qiu also thought that Shin Miao was afraid and softly comforted. Jiu Nyang said correctly. "Jiao Jiao need not be afraid." Shin Miao's eyes drooped down. The Shaochun city was a small place at the borderlands and in the borderlands, there would always be nomads invading. The Turks in the east were one such group. These Turks were physically strong and had capable horses, making them extremely fierce in battle. If they were to fight with real swords and spears, Ming Qi's side would be at a disadvantage. But because the Shaochun city was easy to defend and hard to attack, coupled with the Luo family's prestige, these 2 Ju dared not advance and only dared to harass at the borders. Every year from August to October, the grasslands where the 2 Ju lived would be dry, and the 2 Ju would come to the Shaochun city to snatch things. All he had to do was chase these small fights away. The commoners were used to this, so they didn't take it to heart. But Shin Miao remembered that in this year, a major event happened in the Shaochun city. She nodded her head and nonchalantly said, "The Luo family army is as brave and fierce as Father Shin family army. In that case, if the 2 Ju were to attack the city, one fear that they would be able to resist." Luo Sui's expression stiffened and Luo Yenying's and Luo Yentai's expression did not look good either and could be said to be somewhat embarrassed. When there was no opponent, the Luo family would not be able to cope with such a huge expenditure of troops and horses. Moreover, Emperor Wen Hui in the Ding capital simply did not care about the Shaochun city, thus after so many years, the Luo family's army was no different from dispersing. The officers and soldiers went home to farm or do business. The Luo family army that was left behind was just a bunch of loose traders. Other than going to the border every year to intimidate the Turks, he basically did nothing else. Comparing the Luo family's army with the Shin family's army was simply slapping the Luo family's face. Luo Sa immediately turned hostile and looked at Shin Miao with anger. "What do you mean?" Luo Ling quickly pulled him back and looked at Shin Miao warmly. "Second younger brother's words are too serious. Biao younger sister must not lower herself to second younger brother's level. Those from the Ding capital are indeed different." Luo Tan's mouth twitched. "We've lived here for so many years without any problems, but cousin is always afraid of this and that." "Don't worry, the Turks will not enter the city. It's already been so many years." Shin Miao gently smiled. "What if one enters the city?" Luo Tan did not expect that Shin Miao would refute and could not help but be surprised for a moment. Luo Sui, who was sitting on the high seat, did not speak. The Luo family's education of the younger generation was like this, to let them fight for themselves and discuss on their own. There were some things that one would only be able to find out more by exploring on their own. The elders just watched quietly from the side. Shen Miao's words just now had some meaning, but since Luo Sui did not speak, it was not good for Luo Yening and the rest to speak, so they could only watch the younger generation speak. How can he enter the city? Luo Tan angrily retorted, those Turks only want some rations and tools. Once the 10th month is over, the drought will be over and they will not dare to act recklessly. After entering the city, we still have to fight. How can it be that easy? Shen Miao's expression did not change as she lightly said, only food and tools for more than 10 years. Don't you feel that it is too easy to satisfy? Everyone was surprised for a moment. Luo Qian's age was similar to Shen Miao and he asked curiously, Biao youngest sister, what do you mean? If it was me, I would not be so satisfied. Shen Miao replied warmly, there are brave soldiers, strong horses and retreating grasslands. All of these, as compared to the scattered soldiers in the Shaochun city and the broken weapons, are much better. Why not fight for it? If one does not fight, it is because one is not familiar with the route to the Shaochun city. But after exploring for more than 10 years, for such a small city, even if one only comes once a year and only goes to one place every time, the map can be drawn out. She tilted her head and smiled, when two armies confront each other, one side is fully prepared but do not take action. Is it because of the rules that have been observed for so many years and must be abided by? Who said it? Chapter 426. For a long time, no one in the room spoke. The two Zhu did not have any ambitions towards the Shaochun city, and every time because of the lack of supplies, they would snatch things, and everyone was used to it. Who knew that Shen Miao's words today from another aspect, an aspect that they had never thought about before, awakened them from their dreams. Not bad, the Turks had everything, so why couldn't they have ambition? If the two Zhu wanted to take over the Shaochun city, how could the people in the Shaochun city resist? Luo Sa's expression also slowly changed. He looked at Shen Miao and even though his tone was still not good, compared to the anger just now, it had eased a lot. He said, then what do you want to say? I see that the Luo family's army is not as tightly gathered as the Shen family's army. Shen Miao said it politely. How was it not as tightly gathered as the Shen family's army? It was obviously a plate of loose sand. Seeing the flash of pain in Luo Sui's eyes, Shen Miao smiled gently. When one was young, one had heard from mother about the heroic bearing of Waizu leading the Luo family's army into battle. Waizu had never thought of restoring the glory of the Luo family's army. The glory of the Luo family army was restored once again. Everyone in the room sucked in a breath of cold air. Even Shen Xian and Luo Shuayan looked at Shen Miao with some disbelief. Luo Qian's and Luo Tan's eyes brightened. The younger generation would always look forward to unlimited glory, and the scene that Shen Miao described would at least greatly satisfy the vanity of the youths and females. Luo Ling and Luo Sa were older and did not show that eagerness, but there was still a trace of expectation in Luo Sa's eyes. Luo Sui looked at Shen Miao for a while and suddenly laughed, you this little girl, your ambition is not small. It is rare for a place like the Ding capital to be able to raise such a hard bone like you. His words were filled with appreciation towards Shen Miao. Luo Shuayan and Shen Xian immediately felt honored. But it was only for a moment before Luo Sui sighed and said in an unclear tone, it is just that girl, to restore the glory of the Luo family's army, how would it be as simple as you said? Soldiers, horses, and rations all cost money. How could the Luo family afford it? It's useless to raise an army. Little girl, do you want to waste all the money of my Luo family on this? Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. But those soldiers were raised by the treasury's silver, like the Luo family's army that was far away in a small place. Emperor Wenhui could rest assured and naturally would not allocate any silver for the Luo family to bear the expenses of such a troop. Yet, they didn't know who they should be dealing with and who they should be fighting against. It was indeed sad. The imperial court is not willing to give the Luo clan money because the Luo clan's army is not outstanding. But if the Luo family army's prestige was outstanding and they won the battle, His Majesty would take the initiative to send money to them in order to appease the various factions in the court. As for the enemy, Shen Miao smiled gently. Far away there is the Qin country in Great Liang, nearby there is the Tuju and Xiong Nu Ming Qi never had a lack of opponents, and with the advancement of their military strength, naturally they would be sent to further battlefields. Grandfather, what do you think? Let's not talk about what she said, but the way she talked and smiled as she analyzed the various forces, and the way she smiled and tilted her head could be seen clearly. She was obviously a pampered young lady from a noble family, but she made people feel that she was a tenacious woman who had climbed from the bottom of society. Luo Sui suddenly got angry. He suddenly stood up and flicked his sleeves before saying coldly, "There is no need to mention the matter of reorganizing the Luo family's army. I do not agree. Shui Yan, bring them down to rest. There is no need to discuss this matter in the future." Finishing, he did not even look at the people in the hall and turned to leave. Luo Sui's anger was inexplicable and Luo Shuiyan was also very puzzled. Shen Qiu touched Shen Miao's head and firmly stood on Shen Miao's side. "Younger sister is good." Luo Sa swept a glance over and whispered to Luo Ling, "This Biao younger sister is not simple." Luo Ling smiled and said, "Perhaps." Luo Tan's lips twitched. What is so great about just talking glibly? Even grandfather was angered. Luo Qian shook his head and his eyes stared at Shen Miao, who was talking to Shen Qiu, not only glibly talking, she also looks very pretty. Older sister is prettier than you. Luo Tan glared at him fiercely. Chapter 427. The days in the Luo family was thus settled down. Shen Xian and Shen Qiu were masters that could not stay idle, and would train the soldiers at the simple and crude training grounds outside the Luo family's residence. Naturally they were training the front line of the Shen family's army. Those frontline soldiers were the kitchen soldiers, and after being tormented by Shen Xian daily, they were miserable, and Shen Xian also trained till he was angry. Luo Shuiyan was busy visiting friends and relatives. The Shaochun city was the place where she lived during her childhood and teenage years, and there were many close friends here. Every day she would bring Shen Miao out to visit her old friends, and inexplicably, Shen Miao got to know a bunch of Furens. Initially everyone served young Lady Jiao, who came from Ming Qi, cautiously, and the food she ate was the most elaborate, the silk thread was the most delicate, the snacks were made in different ways, and even the flowers and plants were trimmed more beautifully than before. In the past, those female officials who came to the Shaochun city from the Ding capital had some temper, and everyone was afraid that they would not be careful and not serve Shen Miao well. Who knew that after staying for a period of time, one would discover that the previous thoughts were superfluous. Shen Miao blended in very well in the Shaochun city, and did not receive any special treatment. There would occasionally be hail in the Shaochun city, and Shen Miao was only somewhat curious and not afraid. After a long time, the Luo family gradually put down their guard against this Biao young lady. Among the 4 juniors of the Luo family, Luo Ling and Luo Sa had started to take up positions in the guards, and were rarely seen. Luo Tan and Luo Qian spent more time at home, and when Shen Miao gave her a mirror, Luo Tan shook hands with Shen Miao. As for Luo Qian, he had a lively temperament, and was like a grown-up Su Ming Lang, pestering Shen Miao all day to tell her stories of the Ding capital. Shen Miao did not need to think about Fu Xiu Yi's matters in the Shaochun city, and her mind was much clearer. She treated Luo Qian as a younger brother. On this day, Luo Qian and Luo Tan came to Shen Miao's courtyard to look for her. The Shaochun city was not comparable to the Ding capital, and if one went to the Ding capital, one could still go shopping. The big and small shops would not be finished even after a few months, but the Shaochun city was small, and there was not much to shop after a few days. Shen Miao stayed in the residence, and Luo Qian and Luo Tan felt bored, so they came over to talk to her. Luo Qian was eating the Jiangnan snacks that the kitchen made for Shen Miao as he said, "Yesterday I went to the drill grounds to watch older brother Qiu train the soldiers. Even though those soldiers were not good, older brother Qiu's martial arts were very high. And cousin Qiu's bodyguard Mo, I couldn't even last a few moves against him. Cousin, can you ask cousin Qiu to teach me a few moves?" Shen Miao smiled, "If you want to learn, just tell eldest brother directly. He will definitely agree." Really? Luo Qian's youthful nature instantly made him happy. Speaking of which, it was strange. Most of the gentlemen in the Ding capital were arrogant, but because they had experienced too many things in their youth, they would show some slyness that was not commensurate with their age. However, the younger generation of the Luo clan was different. For example, Luo Qian was sincere and straightforward. He had the innocence of a young man, and it was easy for others to have a good impression of him. Biaomei, Luo Qian was also very close to this good-looking and docile little Biaomei and had long regarded her as one of his own. He said, "Qiu Biaomei's martial arts are really very good to look at. Is he the number one person in the Ding capital?" No. It should be the number one person in Mingqi. Eldest brother and second brother's martial arts are the best among us but still lost to older brother Qiu's hands. Luo Tan, who had been flipping through the picture book, finally could not bear to listen anymore. She bit the tangerine in her mouth and rolled her eyes at Luo Qian. "Are you stupid? So ignorant and ill-informed. Not to mention the Luo family's people, not to mention that I am your older sister. Really shameful." Shen Miao was already used to Luo Tan and Luo Qian, these two siblings, bickering all day long. Sure enough, Luo Qian was not convinced when he heard it. "What do you know? How am I ignorant and ill-informed? You mean that older brother Qiu is not the number one?" Chapter 428. Southern Xie, Northern Shen. Luo Tan unhurriedly said. Shen Miao was startled. Luo Tan was already proudly shaking her head. Everyone knows that there are two great military families in Mingqi. One is Gugu and Gufu's formidable great general Shen family and the other is the Xie family of the residents of the Marquis of Lin, and older brother Qiu is a talent of the Shen family, and one heard that the little Marquis of the residents of the Marquis of Lin and is also a stunning talent. At that time Zhu Fu had the fortune to see that little Marquis of the Xie family once and said that this child is not a person of the pond and will one day soar to the 9 heavens. Maternal Zhu Fu. Seen little Marquis of the Xie family? Shen Miao asked hesitantly. Luo Qian also said, "That's right. Older sister, why do I not know? You only know how to eat. How would you know?" Luo Tan rolled her eyes at Luo Qian and continued, "One heard that in the beginning when the Marquis of Lin and took the military strategy, one coincidentally saw little Marquis Xie in the tent. After Zhu Fu saw that little Marquis Xie, he sighed. Originally I wanted to inquire about it, but Zhu Fu told me to stay away from him and said that little Marquis Xie is a dangerous person and not to be provoked." Shen Miao's eyes hung down. She did not know that Luo Sui had seen Xie Jingxing before. But Luo Sui was actually able to see that Xie Jingxing was not simple. Before she could break free from her own thoughts, she heard Luo Tan asking, "Youngest Biao sister, speaking of which, you also grew up in the Ding capital, so you should have seen that little Marquis Xie before." Shen Miao paused for a moment and nodded her head. "What does he look like?" Luo Tan grabbed Shen Miao's arm. "Is it the same as the rumors say that he is a handsome immortal? Is he more handsome than older brother Ling?" The older brother Ling that she was talking about was naturally Luo Ling. Among the 3 sons of the Luo family, Luo Ling was gentle, Luo Sa was violent and Luo Qian was lively. It was just that because Luo Ling was the most gentle, he looked the most handsome. Shen Miao said, "Not as handsome as older brother Ling, ah." Luo Tan released her hand, her eyes filled with disappointment, "But I heard that the Xie young Marquis has a good appearance and his character is the most romantic. If a woman were to take a look at him, they would be intoxicated." You're even inferior to Big Brother Ling. Luo Qian looked at her gloatingly. The most important thing for a man is naturally his ability. What does it have to do with looks? Moreover, even if that little Xie Marquis is really looking for a wife, he would definitely not look for someone like you. Luo Qian smiled as he looked at Shen Miao. Naturally one would look for youngest Biao's sister, this kind of fresh and gentle young lady. Luo Tan and Luo Qian immediately became a mess. Shen Miao held her forehead as she looked at the two siblings quarreling and felt somewhat helpless in her heart. She did not expect that Xie Jingxing's reputation would spread far and wide in the Shaochun city. Thinking about Xie Jingxing's trip to the northern borderland, he should have already arrived. This was his first time leading troops into battle as a young marshal. Although he knew that Xie Jingxing had the ability to lead troops into battle, but when he thought of the ending of this person's previous life, his heart could not help but shrink. Forget it. Shen Miao shook her head and drove away those inexplicable thoughts in her heart. In the past, she thought that Xie Jingxing was best at commanding troops and setting up formations. But now that she fought with Xie Jingxing, she realized that he was best at playing chess behind the scenes. That person's mind was calm and steady, so he must definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessing. Time passed by in a flash. Luo Tan and Luo Qian sat at Shen Miao's place until evening. The skies started to turn gloomy. Once it was the 9th or 10th month in the Shaochun city, the grasslands outside the city would be dry, but there would often be heavy rain in the city. Different from the rain in the Ding capital, the rain in the Shaochun city carried the smell of sand and was incomparably fierce. The dark clouds almost covered the entire sky, and in a short moment, it was as if it was night time. Luo Tan looked at the sky and said, "Not good. One fear that there will be hail again." Chapter 429. Why haven't Uncle and the others returned yet? Luo Qian stood up as well and frowned. Although the Luo family army had dispersed, they still needed people to guard the city. On normal days, Luo Lianying and Luo Liantai would be working in the guards, and when Shen Xian came, he would bring Shen Qiu along to help. On the other hand, he was supposed to return to the mansion for dinner in the evening, but he had yet to return at this time. Shen Miao looked outside and suddenly thought of something as her face changed. Luo Tan saw that Shen Miao's expression was not right and thought that she was afraid and felt somewhat strange in her heart. "Biao, youngest sister, are you afraid of hail? There was one a few days ago, and you weren't afraid then. Why are you afraid now?" Speaking till here, he patted Shen Miao's shoulders. "Do not be afraid. We have lived here for so many years and there would often be hail at this time of the year. Don't be afraid." Shen Miao did not get better because of her comfort, and her expression became uglier. As such, even the carefree Luo Qian also felt that something was wrong. He looked at Shen Miao doubtfully. "Why is Biao youngest sister so nervous? Is it because you are worried about Gufu?" "It's okay." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard someone calling from outside. It was the Luo family's manservant. Because he ran too fast, he even tripped. He said, "Young master, young lady, Lady Biao, madam wants you to go to the hall quickly." Luo Tan was stunned and frowned. What happened? The two Ju came to snatch things again, so master brought the two masters and General Shen to the grasslands. The two young masters are still in the mansion, and the weather is about to change. "Miss, please hurry to the main hall." Although the manservant was a little anxious, his attitude was not flustered. It was obvious that this had happened many times, and he seemed to have some experience. Luo Tan angrily stomped her foot. "Damn Turks." Luo Qian said to Shen Miao, "Biao youngest sister, follow us in first. It will be all right." At this time, he did not forget to comfort Shen Miao. Shen Miao nodded her head. When they reached the front hall of the Luo residence, there were already quite a number of people gathered there. Both Madame Yu and Madame Ma were in the hall. When they saw the three of them, they heaved a sigh of relief. Most likely Madame Ma was afraid of scaring Shin Miao, so she walked over to Shin Miao's side and pulled Shin Miao's hands. Jiao Jiao had not seen such big hailstones before. It is all right, later we will talk in the hall. After so long, Jiao Jiao had never told us about the matters in the Ding capital. However, he did not mention anything about the Turks at all. Madame Yu's temperament was a bit gentler, so she also smiled and said, "That's right. Let's eat lamb stew tonight. I wonder if Jiao Jiao will like it." The Shaochun city was adjacent to the grasslands, and when the two Jew did not come to rob, they would use cattle and sheep to exchange for some daily necessities. Cattle and sheep were born sturdy. After slaughtering the fresh sheep, they cut the mutton into thin slices and set up a small pot. The thin and plump slices were almost cooked as soon as they came into contact with water. Then, they were dipped in a little spicy sauce. Previously Luo Tan wanted to let Shin Miao eat the lamb here but was afraid that she would not be used to it. She did not think that it would be brought up today. It was obvious that she wanted Shin Miao to be distracted and not think about other things. Shin Miao smiled gently at Madame Yu. The Luo family always released their goodwill to the greatest extent. The two Jews' nest was in the depths of the grasslands, and every time there was a pursuit, the Luo family's army did not have enough manpower. It required all the able-bodied males of the Luo family to move out in full strength. But this year with Shen Xian and wife, it was better. Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyan, Shen Qiu, Luo Yening and Luo Yen Tai all went, and even Luo Sui also followed. In the Shaochun city, only the Luo family could guard the commoners. Originally Luo Ling and Luo Sa also wanted to go, but since Shen Xian and the rest went, Luo Ling and Luo Sa stayed in the Shaochun city. The sky outside was already dark and Luo Tan bit her lips tightly, looking somewhat sullen. Her own home was being robbed by others every year. No matter what, she would not be happy. Chapter 430. Most of the people in the hall were females, and there were also some maids and servants. Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang quietly handed the snacks that were left in the afternoon to Shin Miao for her to eat. The pot was already set up in the hall and the kitchen was cutting the lamb. The soup in the pot started to emit an aroma, but at this time no one was in the mood to be happy. Luo Qian felt somewhat hungry, and when he saw that there were some snacks beside Shin Miao, he walked over and sat down beside Shin Miao and picked up a snack to eat. Shin Miao looked at him without blinking. Luo Qian was somewhat baffled by Shin Miao's gaze and finally scratched his head and could not help but speak. "Biao, youngest sister, why are you looking at me for? Are you afraid?" The place where both of them sat was far away from Madame Yu and the rest, so ordinary people would not be able to hear their voices. Shin Miao said, "Older brother Qian, why is Waizu not willing to reorganize the Luo family's army?" Luo Qian was startled. That day when Waizu heard me speak, he was angry. One feared that it was not because there was no money to support the Luo family's army. "Older brother Qian, can you tell me the reason?" Luo Qian's eyes looked around and avoided Shin Miao's eyes as he stammered, "What reason is there?" "It is just that there is no money." Biao, youngest sister, should not think too much. Without money, how can one build the Luo family's army? Shin Miao looked at him quietly. Her eyes were bright and moving, full of clarity, without the slightest bit of emotion. However, it was this kind of frank expression that made people unable to resist. It made people feel that lying in front of such a pair of eyes was blasphemy. Luo Qian was after all a lively youth, and his relationship with Shin Miao was not bad, so he finally gave up and said softly, "Biao, youngest sister, this matter is something that no one in our residence dare to say. But since you are one of us, I will tell you about it. Even if you know about it, do not tell others. If my father and mother knew that I told you about it, I will definitely receive a beating." Shin Miao nodded her head. "Actually, you are not the first person to mention the matter of reorganizing the Luo family's army." Luo Qian said, "The time when the Luo family's army really started to decline was not long after youngest Gu was born. At that time the Luo family was already declining and Zuzu's ambitions were not fulfilled. When Zuzu saw that he was depressed all day, she proposed to revive the Luo family's army. Grandfather already had this idea in his heart, and as soon as grandmother said so, he immediately made preparations. But at that time we were still short of money, so grandmother said what Biao Mei said to grandfather that day, that the army should be famous. As long as we win the battle, His Majesty will notice this army and naturally allocate the money. At that time, the problem of the silver would be solved. Thus, my grandfather volunteered to be the commander to fight a border war. Luo Qian sighed, Biao youngest sister, you should have already guessed what the result was. Grandfather's great defeat had almost become a joke. The Luo family's army was already in decline, and after suffering such a heavy blow, they were even more unable to recover. Most importantly, when grandfather was leading the army to war, grandmother was seriously ill. In order to make grandfather feel at ease, grandmother didn't let her family tell grandfather the news. By the time grandfather returned from the defeat, grandmother had already passed away. Grandfather always felt that if he didn't fulfill his promise to grandmother, he wouldn't be able to face her even if he died 100 years later. After so many years, he did not reorganize the Luo family's army because he did not have the courage to face the past failures. Luo Qian put down the snacks in his hands and looked at Xin Miao, Biao youngest sister, I know that you want to let the Luo family's army regain its prestige, but our Luo family does not seek to be famous. My mother said before that one must cherish the people in front of one. Just like grandfather, if time could be turned back, he would definitely not fight that war and choose to stay by grandmother's side. So if one can make grandfather happy, even if the Luo family's army continues to be depressed, it would not matter. Chapter 431. Shen Miao looked at Luo Qian and her heart was slightly surprised. She did not think that with Luo Qian's carefree temperament, he would actually say such words. The Luo family's righteousness, kindness was indeed not fake. But to know of such a past event from Luo Qian's mouth, one's heart also sighed. This was the worst defeat of the awe-inspiring great general's life. Was it because he was overconfident, or because he didn't have any confidence in the outcome? Shen Miao thought that it was not that Luo Sui could not afford to lose this battle, but the one he could not afford to lose was none other than Luo Furen. Abandoning his ill wife and choosing meritorious service, the final outcome ruthlessly slapped him in the face. No wonder that when Shen Miao said those words that day, Luo Sui's face instantly changed color. One feared that the most hidden pain in this general's heart had been evoked. But if one is depressed like this, would Waizumu be happy? Shen Miao suddenly opened her mouth. AI. Luo Qian turned his head to look at her and was somewhat puzzled. Shen Miao smiled gently, if I admire a person and he is a hero, one would hope that he would wear the treasured sword that he should wear, ride the fierce horse that he should ride, lead the bravest soldiers and obtain the most proud meritorious service. I am not willing for him to suffer grievances. Now that Waizumu is suffering grievances, if Waizumu knew, would she not feel heartache? If it was me, I would feel heartache. Luo Qian was somewhat confused by Shen Miao's words. Not to mention anything else, to say admire in front of a male like him made him somewhat aghast. Madame Ma also said that Shen Miao was a young lady from the Ding capital and was delicate and timid, one must take good care of her as she would have a shy temperament. Now it seemed. Where was there any shyness? One feared that she was more magnanimous than Luo Tan. Just as he was thinking, one heard a servant shouting outside, eldest young master, second young master is back. Everyone looked towards the entrance of the hall and it was the two brothers, Luo Ling and Luo Sa. Most likely it was about to rain outside as the air was somewhat humid. Both of their clothes seemed to be stained with water. Luo Ling and Luo Sa had just returned from the garrison and looked somewhat travel-worn. Madame Yu first instructed the servant to pour tea for both of them and Luo Sa downed it in one gulp. Luo Tan had already ran up and asked Luo Ling, older brother Ling, how is it outside? Seeing that it's going to hail, I've already told the commoners to go back to their houses to hide. Everything is prepared outside. Luo Ling replied with a smile, second younger brother and I will guard here for the night after returning. Our hall is sturdy, so there's nothing to be afraid of. What happened to Dad, Uncle, and Grandpa? Luo Tan asked relentlessly. Luo Sa frowned and said, he's not back yet. Luo Tan still wanted to say something but when Luo Ling saw Luo Qian and Shin Miao walking over, he quickly said, it is nothing. Most likely one would be somewhat busy tonight and would return tomorrow. He changed the topic, it smells so good. Are we going to eat hot mutton tonight? Cousin has never eaten this before. I don't know if she is used to it. Shin Miao walked in front of Luo Ling. Luo Ling was 18 this year and his brows were as handsome as Luo Yaning but his temperament was as gentle and considerate as Madame Yu. It was a far cry from Luo Sa's violent and unruly temperament. Shin Miao said, older brother Ling, is the city guards deployed? Luo Ling was surprised for a moment as he did not expect that Shin Miao would ask about this and replied, it is all arranged. How many people are there in the city guards? Shin Miao asked. This time Luo Sa's gaze landed on Shin Miao. When these juniors spoke, Madame Yu and Madame Ma were far away. Luo Qian asked, why is youngest Biao's sister asking this for? Tonight there will be hail so most likely no one will enter the city. 30 in the east and 30 in the west. In addition to 10 in the north, there are a total of 70 people. Luo Ling patiently answered. Chapter 432. Is there usually so many people? Shin Miao asked. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Ling said, on normal days there would be more people, but today father and the rest had transferred them away, so there are not many city guards left. However, as long as nothing happened in the city, 70 people would be enough. The weather is not good tonight. Little brother is right, no one should enter the city. The Luo army only had so many people that it could use. In pursuing the Turks, it was only natural that it take all the useful people with it. The remaining city guards seemed to be stretched thin. Of course the Shaochun city had been safe and sound for so many years, the city guards would at most help to capture fugitives or thieves, and there was not much use. Luo Sa stared at Shin Miao for a while and suddenly said, you are afraid that the two Ju will attack? Everyone was taken aback by his words. Luo Tan's jaw dropped. Luo Qian asked, second brother, what are you talking about? Why would the Turks attack? Luo Sa sneered and stared at Shin Miao's eyes without blinking, didn't Biao youngest sister say it on the day you came? The two Ju have ambition and strength so why can't they attack? Is this what you're afraid of? Luo Sa's character was somewhat aggressive and facing his sharp gaze, Shin Miao nodded her head, correct. What I am afraid of is this. How is this possible? Luo Tan said, not to say if what you said will happen, today father and Gu Fu had gone to the grasslands to pursue the two Ju, so how would the two Ju be distracted to attack the Shaochun city? If he was really ambitious, wouldn't it have been better to find an opportunity before? Luring the tiger away from the mountain. Not only the Ming Qi people would use it. Shin Miao said lightly, even though the two Ju are nomads, they are not fools. After living with the people of the Shaochun city for so many years, do you think that you would not learn something? As long as the Turks aren't fools, they would have learned it long ago. Shin Miao's uncharacteristic cold attitude made the few of them somewhat surprised. After a moment of silence, it was Luo Ling who spoke first, youngest Biao's sister, is this your own guess or? Where did you hear this news? Shin Miao had always been worried that the Turks would attack the city and today she was acting so strangely. Everyone noticed this point and as long as one was not a fool, they would be able to see that something was wrong. Simply being afraid was one thing, but if he got other information from somewhere else, it would be another matter. Intuition. Intuition. Luo Sa was not angry but laughed, Biao youngest sister, this is not the time to joke. Could it be that both older brothers have been in the city's guards for so many years and do not know the logic of taking preventive measures? Shen Miao's expression was slightly restrained and the meekness in her eyes was restrained, and gradually there was determination. She said, "If the Turks really attack, we can prepare in advance and naturally everyone will be happy. If they did not attack, the Shaochun city would be spared from the calamity. Would it not be a good thing? Could it be that bad things had to happen in order to be prepared? If they don't even understand this, it's no wonder that the Luo family is on the decline." Luo Sa was furious. Luo Tan's and Luo Qian's faces were also not looking good. It was Luo Ling who stared at Shen Miao for a while, and his expression did not change and was as gentle as before. He cupped his hands towards her and said, "Biao youngest sister is right. It is us who are slow-witted, but based on the lack of manpower of the city's guards, it is an irrefutable fact. Based on Biao youngest sister's opinion, what should be done?" On the surface it was a question, but it was to ask her to solve a thorny problem and to test her ability. Shen Miao's heart was startled. This gentle Biao older brother was not as generous as he looked on the surface. She said, "If it really come to this step, it is not possible for the manpower to increase for no reason. The Turks came prepared and we are naturally not their opponent. I am after all a female and do not know martial arts. Rather than taking risks, it is better to protect myself. Older brother Ling, why not gather more guards at the Luo residence's doors to protect the Luo residence? If there is a problem, they would be able to resist for a while." When her slippery words came out, everyone was stunned. She spoke so vehemently, but at this moment, why did she show such a helpless look? For a moment, the younger generation of the Luo family did not understand Shen Miao's meaning. Luo Sa was the most depressed. He wanted to get angry when he saw Shen Miao but could not find a reason to get angry and could only sit at the side with a face full of anger. Luo Ling looked at Shen Miao meaningfully and said unexpectedly, "Then do as Biao youngest sister says." Everyone sat down in the hall again. One did not know why, but because of Shen Miao's words, the atmosphere became somewhat stiff. Even Luo Qian and Luo Tan seemed to be nervous. Only Madame Ma and Madame Yu did not know anything and were still instructing the chefs in the kitchen. It was until the sky was completely dark that Luo Ling's guards suddenly requested to see him. Luo Ling let him in, and that guard's expression was anxious as he whispered a few words to Luo Ling's ear. Luo Ling's expression changed and suddenly looked towards Shen Miao. Shen Miao was drinking tea leisurely. Chapter 433. Shen Miao was leisurely drinking tea. At this time, when the wind was raging outside, she was sitting in a corner of the hall and slowly sipping the hot tea that Jingzhe handed over. It was as if she was really a naive and innocent young lady who was waiting for the lamb slices at the back of the kitchen to be ready so that she could sit around and enjoy the hot lamb. Luo Ling's expression became somewhat serious. Luo Sa noticed that something was wrong with him and followed Luo Ling's gaze to look at Shen Miao. His face also sank a bit as he asked, "What happened?" Luo Ling did not care about him and did not instruct the guard what to do, but stood up and walked in front of Shen Miao. "Biao youngest sister, step aside to talk. Cousin Ling, if you have anything to say, just say it here." Shen Miao put the teacup in her hands aside and looked at him with a smile. If something really happened, it would not be hidden. Seeing this, Luo Qian and Luo Tan also walked over. Madame Ma and Madame Yu noticed the commotion this time. They thought that there was a dispute between Shen Miao and Luo Ling, and at this time, they would naturally side with the female. Madame Yu immediately walked over and glanced at Luo Ling before shaking her head in disapproval. "Linger, do not scare Jiao Jiao." Hearing this, Luo Sa sneered and said, "Who's scaring who? Big brother, what exactly happened?" Luo Qian was young and spoke without thinking. If he had any doubts in his heart, he would ask out loud. Luo Ling looked at Shen Miao and Shen Miao smiled gently at him, as if she knew what he was going to say next. That calmness of grasping everything made Luo Ling slightly startled. A moment later, he sighed and said helplessly, "The city guards have sent news that the Turks. It looks like they're entering the city." What? Luo Tan exclaimed. She immediately realized that her voice was too loud, so she covered her mouth. As they spoke, the surrounding maids and senior servants were far away and did not hear clearly. But the greatest taboo in the world was to shake the morale of the army. They had gathered here to hide from the hail, but if the Turks were to learn that they had entered, the morale of the army would immediately fall into disarray. Even if there was no chaos because of Luo Ling and Luo Sa, at least there would be panic. Madame Yu and Madame Ma were from ordinary families and naturally did not have the ability to protect themselves. When they heard this, they were stunned. Madame Ma immediately said, Ling, Sa, shouldn't we get someone to protect Jiao Jiao and the others first? How long can our Luo residents resist? When will your father come back? Even the smartest and most capable woman couldn't help but panic when faced with such a situation. As for Yusher, she didn't know what to do. However, she still subconsciously said, why don't we hide somewhere first? Luo Tan's and Luo Qian's faces were somewhat pale. They had lived in the Shaochun city since birth, and even though they had heard Luo Sui's stories of the battlefield, but they always felt that it was something far away from them. The Turks never entered the cities, but the stories of what would happen to them once they entered the cities had no shortage of stories. Even if Ming Qi's own soldiers attacked a city, there would be a massacre, not to mention the two Jews' savage nature. Biaomei. Biaomei actually guessed correctly. Luo Qian muttered. Madame Ma and Madame Yu were surprised for a moment before Madame Yu looked at Shen Miao, Jiao Jiao. Guessed correctly. Biaomei previously mentioned that the two Jew might attack the city. Luo Ling looked at her and an unclear light flashed in his eyes. Biaomei must have a countermeasure. If one does not mind, please inform me. Now is the time of life and death. Luo Ling's attitude was extremely low, or it could be said that the Luo family would not have the arrogant thoughts of others. Otherwise, with Luo Ling's seniority and status, there was no need to be so humble to consult a young female. Chapter 434. When Luo Ling's action landed in Madame Ma's and the rest's eyes, they were extremely shocked. Luo Ling was the most outstanding among the younger generation of the Luo family, and now he actually wanted to consult Shen Miao. Shen Miao said, older brother Ling also did not tell me what is the situation now. Luo Ling waved his hands to summon the guard who came to report. When the guard saw Luo Ling going to ask an unfamiliar young lady, he was somewhat surprised but still honestly replying young lady, someone from the guards saw the two Jew gathering at the city gates. The general has not returned and the city guards do not have enough manpower. At the end, he was so ashamed that he could not speak anymore. Shen Miao did not have time to bother about his awkwardness and asked instead, is there a lot of manpower or not? Are the two Jews scattered or united? Luo Sa's eyes were like torches as he stared at Shen Miao. That guard thought about it and said, there are a lot of manpower. Even though they are scattered, there is the sound of horses. There should be reinforcements. The few of them suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Luo Ling's and Luo Sa's expression became extremely ugly in a moment. If there was some fluke just now, at this moment they were really aware of the seriousness of the matter. Having horses meant that there was an army. The army that was able to contend with the two Jew on normal days was now fighting in the grasslands. At the moment the Shaochun city did not have any real military strength, but at this time they caught up with another two Jew army. Shen Miao was right. It was a diversion to lure the tiger away from the mountain. These two Jew had become cunning and even secretly developed another army. This army might not be as strong as the one that Shen Xian dealt with, but to bathe the Shaochun city in blood, it was more than enough. Madame Ma and Madame Yu also realized that the matter was not good. Madame Ma said, why not call back all the manpower that can be used? No matter what, first protect you younger generation. It was the tradition of the Luo family since ancient times to let the younger generation leave first when there was an accident. It was to sacrifice the older generation and leave the hope to the younger generation. Luo Tan's eyes immediately turned red and pulled Madame Ma's sleeves. Mother, I do not want. If it is really not possible, then fight it out with them. Luo Qian gritted his teeth and there were two flames of anger in his eyes. In any case, we have the blood of generals flowing in our bones. Could it be that we are still afraid of those barbarians? Take the sword. At most, we will die together. Qian, Madame Ma said angrily, what nonsense are you talking about? Do you want to die if you go out now? If it really doesn't work, Big Brother and I will cover your escape. It was Luo Sa who opened his mouth. He said solemnly, there are still carriages in the residence. Escape from the back gate of the city. There is a section of mountain road. We will not be discovered even if we hide. No. Shen Miao interrupted them. Luo Sa looked at her. Do you have a way? Shen Miao shook her head. A trace of disappointment flashed across Luo Qian's and Luo Tan's faces at the same time. They did not know why, but they felt that Shen Miao seemed to have a lot of ability. Even though she looked delicate and noble and had tender skin, but every time they spoke to Shen Miao, that kind of peace and confidence made one feel at ease as if they had a backbone. But now that Shen Miao could not think of a solution, Luo Qian and Luo Tan were somewhat desperate. Then do as second younger brother says. Luo Ling said, first send you to the horse carriage and all the guards in the residence will follow you. It is enough to leave second younger brother and me in the Luo residence. I will go with second younger brother to the city guards. This was to sacrifice the two brothers to fight for time for the others. Madame Yu's tears fell in a moment and almost fainted as she pulled Luo Ling's hands. How can one let the two of you stay here? Madame Ma shook her head, we are one family. If we are to leave, we will leave together. This deadlock could not be resolved. Shen Miao shook her head and spat out two words, no. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.